Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 272, and we are happy to have you with us on this Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good.
Allergies kicking my ass now that I'm out of the store.
Here we go.
Other than that, I'm good.
Other than that, you're fine? Okay, well, good.
Other than the occasional sneeze.
All right, Mike, if you want to introduce yourself just briefly here to everyone.
All right, well, I am Mike Dieter. I'm called a traveling regular at the Tinder Box at Easton.
That's right.
So I'm fortunate enough to, with what I do for a living, I get to travel 5 different states and get to experience as many cigar experiences as I can. And I got to say that I love going to the Tinder Box every opportunity that I get. So
Fantastic.
To the point where I decided to come on the podcast.
Fantastic. We're happy to have you. And you're not the biggest bourbon drinker, but you're into it a little bit. Definitely more into the cigar side of things.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, we'll see where this goes then.
All right.
Yeah. Anyways, before we get started too far into this, I do want to post this up there. Please share, like, comment, and review. Subscribe on all the formats that you enjoy, whether it be the audio. Everything's up to date on the audio podcast. So Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. It's on there. So make sure you share that and enjoy that. If you're not listening live every week, you can do that on Facebook and also YouTube. Live Wednesdays between 7:30 and 8 o'clock is usually our kickoff time. And that is a great time where you guys can actually comment and stay part of the conversation, both part 1 and part 2. So we appreciate all you guys doing that. But broadening our audience is always the biggest help. We also have the option, if you guys want to really chip in there from a financial side of things, patreon.com/bourbonandbs podcast. You guys can do a monthly contribution, $5, $10, or $25, whatever you guys would like to do. Also, we have Venmo available for a one-time contribution, which we appreciate those that have done that. It's been fantastic. That's going to be at Bourbon and BS on Venmo. And if you guys do want to get any of the swag as well, buy Jack. That's byjack.com/bourbonandbs. Nate's got the 3/4 sleeve on, the white, black, and gold there. BS Cigar Company. It's got the other logo on the back, says Spirit and Focus. I have the podcast shirt on in blue. Pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. And we've got some other hoodies, which right now in Ohio, you do not need any hoodies. In fact, Nate's pushing it with the 3/4. He's like, it was on top.
We're in the shade.
That's fair. A little balmy here, but yeah, check that out.
I don't dress for the podcast. I dress for after the podcast on the way home.
That's fair.
That's
fair. All right, I'll allow it.
It's funny. Right after we went live, Ray Cheshire's like, "Hey, you guys doing a show today?" Like,
we are.
We are. Right. 2 minutes ago.
I want to thank our sponsors, also Tinder Box at Easton, as Mike already mentioned, in Columbus, Ohio. The first cigar is going to be from them and also from Ashton and San Cristobal. This is the San Cristobal Quintessence. We'll be talking about that here in part 1. And there's Ray Cheshire chiming in right there. We also want to thank Altadis USA. We also have, if you guys noticed, the H. Upman by AJ Fernandez, the Heritage. Nice full-bodied cigar from him. They supply the second cigar every week in the continued support. So thank you very much, Altadis USA. Check out H. Upman's at your local brick and mortar or at Tinder Box at Easton. And also the BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver are available. The silver is also available in a limited edition size. That's going to be the 6x60. There's only 500, and I want to say we're already through about 50 of them. So they are starting to fly. They're not going to last long.
Got a couple.
You got a couple?
I got a couple.
Mike, you said you're going to get a couple.
Oh, I'm grabbing a couple.
Okay, very good. And you guys better do that too. All right, let's dive in. We've got, Nate, what are we drinking tonight?
This is the Michter's Small Batch Sour Mash Whiskey. It is not a bourbon. It's a whiskey.
Okay.
So it's coming out of Michter's. They source it, but they bottle it. So sour mash, if you think about like sourdough bread, where you leave part of the previous fermented batch in the tank, and then you put all the new grains in to ferment those. So you're almost, think of it like an infinity bottle.
Yeah.
But for fermentation. So there's always, theoretically part of the first batch in every single batch.
Really? Do you know how much?
Well, I don't know how much they carry over from batch to batch, but they keep some back.
Yeah.
And then just add all the new ingredients on top of it for the next batch.
Okay.
They no longer disclose a mash bill, but the original The first time they did it was 45 corn, 45 rye, and 10 malted barley.
So that is why it's a whiskey and not a bourbon.
Yes.
Okay.
But now there's no age statement on it. They don't disclose the mash bill of what they're doing.
Do they just get
anymore.
lazy, or is this just like a forgotten product? Because Michter's, it has a heck of a lineup under that name.
Yes, it does. In fact, in 2019, this whiskey was voted best whiskey in the world.
This one was.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
And they just stopped.
Well,
age state. Like, all right,
well,
let's work on something else here.
Well, it's probably because when it got an award like that, people started buying it up like crazy, and
Michter's was tough to find just in general for a while,
and so they couldn't sit on barrels long enough in order to hit that age statement.
Got greedy.
Yeah,
got it.
Well, I mean, we've seen like Elijah Craig did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Craig, just the regular small batch used to have an age statement on it. It no longer does because they sell so much of it that they can't just sit on the barrels long enough. Otherwise, they'd run out. So it's a little bit younger than what it used to be, but they're at least meeting customer demands for the product.
And what do we know about Michter's? We've had Michter's before on the show.
Yeah, right? I think we have. I actually have to search. They have a bourbon. They have a rye. They have.
Let me see the bottle.
They have the unblended American whiskey, which comes out every now and then. The unblended American whiskey and the sour mash are technically listed as limited production, so they're not normally on the shelves. So sometimes you'll have people that see it and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've been looking at that for a while," and so they'll pick up a bottle, and then other people see it and they're like, "Meh." So we got a bunch of it at Carfagna's a couple weeks ago, and we still have probably half of it left.
Yeah.
But I had a guy come in today. He'd been looking for that. And so he got super excited.
This?
Yeah.
US 1. Does that mean what I think it means?
Yeah, they were the first distillery.
Did you say that?
Pre-Revolutionary War.
Did you say that?
No.
Okay. Just reading and learning off the label.
Well,
here.
they've gone through.
It's kind of a big deal.
Well, they've gone through quite a bit of history. Yeah. So the brand started in 1753 in Pennsylvania. They're one of the top selling brands back in the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1989 went bankrupt.
1989.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were then revived, and then in 2019 they actually opened their own distilling facility.
And it's just Michter's. This is not one of the big boys.
No.
Yeah. No, what?
Yes, it's just Michter's. It's not one of the big boys.
Like no, wait, what?
Yeah, so their facility is, I think, in Louisville, but
it says Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, they've had a very up and down history.
Well, I haven't had. I mean, what I've had from Michter's, I've enjoyed.
Yeah.
I'll say that, but I don't know as much about them, so that's why I was really kind of listening here.
They were the one that started the trend of putting green label on their rye.
Okay, yeah.
Because now you think how many brands, you look at their rye product and it's got a green label. Michter's was the first one.
They were the first ones to do it. Interesting. Well, Nate, what do you have you had this before?
If I have, it's been a long time and I don't remember.
Okay. What do you think of it?
So it's definitely got some fruit to it, like some apple, peach, butterscotch type of sweetness. It's not like the real heavy dark caramel or anything like that. It's a brighter type of sweetness to it, and then not much spice to it.
I didn't think so either.
But it kind of has this like dusty taste to it, like something that's been sitting open for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. We did have Sean chime in, so I'm not you, Sean, the other Sean, another Sean. He says, so when I asked you how much of the Easton, how much of the previous was the mash, right? Mm-hmm. He says use mother yeast. It always stays. They usually use a ratio of 1-3 or 1-4, old mash to new mash. It's all about controlling the pH level. Thank you, Sean. Put that up on the screen for those that are listening here. And thanks, like I said, right now, guys, if you're listening live on Facebook or YouTube, definitely chime in or share it if you have other people that want to listen in. I don't get the mustiness as much like you're talking about. It's not really spicy.
No.
There's like a hint of vanilla, but it's not one of those overpowering, like in some, you know? Trying to place some of the other stuff there. It's like a little bit of graham cracker to it.
Okay.
I don't know if you get any of that stuff.
I see where you get it and what you mean by it.
Kind of like Teddy Grahams. Remember Teddy Grahams?
Teddy Grahams.
Teddy Grahams. So you got a little like like almost like a sugar, vanilla, honey.
Teddy Grahams.
You getting that there? There we go.
Yeah, I'm not much of a whiskey guy, but I can.
You get the Teddy Grahams?
I was wondering this entire time, like something's. I was thinking it's kind of like Teddy Grahams.
That's it, man.
So I'm glad you said that.
So if I had to read one review site, SIP is.
I bet you they don't say Teddy Grahams.
Barrage of sweet flavors of butterscotch, vanilla, caramel, toffee, and coffee cake.
Ooh, coffee cake.
With
that sounds awesome, Sean says.
Cherry, raspberry, and cinnamon bun on the back end.
Cinnamon bun. All right.
There's your Teddy Grahams.
Teddy Grahams, yeah.
And then it says this whiskey tastes very quote unquote old fashioned in nature.
What does that even mean?
That's, yeah.
Just because it says 53 on there? Taste old fashioned. Okay. Mike, what do you think of this?
I like it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not the biggest alcohol drinker in general. I do prefer whiskey or bourbon or tequila. Those are my three go-tos if I do have something.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I struggle having whiskey straight the most out of the options. This one, I can truly say, this is smooth.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it tastes like Teddy Grahams.
It's probably because it means it's nutritious. Like a good
Very
cereal.
much so. Very much so.
I don't think it works like that, but.
Definitely doesn't.
Okay. Sean, you want to chime in on that? Yeah. Yeah. Don't watch Astro there.
Yep, I see it.
We have a mess over here.
I think it's really good. I do like the little bit of Kentucky hog, but not much to really, it doesn't burn that bad at all. I like the everything, all the tasting notes Nate said. I do taste some of the cinnamon rollish and Teddy Grahamish and cinnamon bun, or no, it was the coffee cake.
Oh,
and I got peach on the nose too a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very good. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yes, I haven't had a cigar yet. I actually ordered something to eat, so I'm a little hungry.
Oh, you're
Uber Eats action.
Oh, nice.
I want to get a little emaciated, so I want to get a little something on my belly.
Nice. Little room service to the old podcast studio right there.
Yeah.
I like it.
Delivered right into the studio.
Right. And you said this was MSRP in Ohio.
$48.99.
$48.99.
Which is the same price, I think, as the unblended American whiskey. I think it's ballpark to what the
straight rye or whatever it's called.
The rye and the bourbon. I'll have to double check.
I like the rye and the bourbon a lot.
But it's definitely a lot cheaper than the 20-year that was recently in the Ohio lottery.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
$1,150.
Well, you look that up. So jumping over the cigar for part one here, San Cristobal Quintessence. This cigar, San Cristobal was originally a Cuban brand, but then Ashton, and it's funny, you go on San Cristobal, Ashton's kind of different. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Ashton, but they don't necessarily own fields, tobacco necessarily, like the traditional sense. All the Ashtons are made by Fuente.
Okay.
San Cristobal, La Roma de Cuba are two of their other brands. Those are made by My Father Cigars. So when you look on like their website, I went straight to their website just to see what they say because I haven't been on there in a long time. And it goes into like this was launched in 2007. This was something that, and I don't think they go into a little bit of the Cuban ties to it. but it's a lot about Don Pepin Garcia and the My Father company. It's literally, it says San Cristobal is born from an extensive Cuban tradition at the hands of celebrated cigar maker Jose Pepin Garcia, known today as Pepin Garcia. And he's been a huge name in the industry, but it's just interesting to me that that's where they or how they advertise this cigar.
Well, if you remember, I'm sure you do, when you open up an Ashton VSG box,
yeah,
whose face is on the inside?
It's Carlito.
Carlito Fuente.
Yeah, on the other side of things. I just thought it was interesting. But this one is going to be, I think it's an Ecuadorian Habano. I'm going to verify that before I really stick to that. That's the wrong cigar. It's Ecuadorian Habano over Nicaraguan, I believe. And this one came in not too long ago from them. See if it even says on here when it was launched. But it's Ecuadorian Habano over Nicaraguan. And it's a nice cigar. It's got Cigar Aficionado rated it. The number 3 cigar, one of the years recently, a 95 rating. Let's see, it's 2021, so very recent. Ray says, why don't you ever smoke the cigars that you send me?
I'm pretty sure
it's a great suggestion. Maybe we will.
Wait, he said Mike doesn't drink much and isn't smoking a cigar. It's right here.
Mike definitely smokes a cigar.
I probably smoke far more than I should.
Yeah. This was also in the top 25 in 2018. So, yeah, this was a more recent release from San Cristobal, a little different. It is based out of Nicaragua, obviously, but it is going to be something from Don Pepin and My Father. Like you said, with the Fuente side of things, it does have on the bottom made by either My Father or Don Pepin Garcia on the bottom of the San Cristobal boxes. This one, it does come in a little bit higher than, and I forget the price. It's around that $15, $16 for San Cristobal. It is a little bit higher price than some of their others.
Yeah.
This came out, like I said, maybe it was like 2016, 2017. I think this came out. I confused this one and their other one, the La Roma de Cuba, the Ovation. They came out around the same time, but I do get those confused. I think it's a beautiful looking cigar. You've got your traditional San Cristobal parrot on there, and then a light blue along with some gold and a lot of flowers as well. So, I mean, the band, I think, is gorgeous.
The band's really cool. I like it.
And the Ecuadorian Habano is what you'd expect. It's definitely that kind of Colorado brown. There's a little bit of off coloring there on the wrapper leaf. But I think the wrapper leaf looks, I wouldn't say flawless, but it's very, very nice wrapper leaf.
Very nice.
Mike, what do you think of the cigar?
You know what? As you know,
mm-hmm.
I typically will go for the much stronger Maduros.
Right. I'm
not the biggest fan of Habanos per se.
Okay.
But I will say this is delightful.
Mm-hmm.
I love the pepper in it too.
A little bit.
It's quite peppery for sure. It's really smooth. It's got a lot of good flavor to it. This has got to be probably top 3 Habanos that I've ever had.
It's a really a balanced Habano, in my opinion.
Yes.
So for some people like yourself, I was curious actually with this, having you on here, knowing what you typically smoke. Big Espinosa fan.
Very big.
We just did a knuckle sandwich. Connecticut. I would almost say that not the same flavor profile, but the body of this cigar is just maybe a hair stronger than the knuckle sandwich Connecticut.
Yeah.
Where you have, like, this is an Ecuadorian Habano, and then you have, for contrast from last week, we were talking about the knuckle sandwich Habano from Espinosa as well. That is obviously a huge bump up in strength and flavor, in my opinion. But this is extremely balanced cigar. It's very delicate. I'll say that, in my opinion. It's very like a delicate kind of a flavor. This is something, it's interesting doing it with, I'm glad we're doing it with this whiskey and not necessarily a barrel strength, something that's like 115, 120. That, I think that might be a little bit too much for a cigar like this.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nate?
No, it's a very smooth cigar, medium body. The wrapper's got a nice, like, velvety texture to it, kind of like that Connecticut last week did.
Got a nice sheen to it.
Yeah, you kind of expect something of this quality coming out of My Father.
You do.
Yeah, and with that price point, it's like, yeah, it should be a really good looking cigar, good burn in, have a lot of good flavor. There's a lot of hallmarks of some traditional, My Father cigars coming through on this.
Yeah, but it's not. For me, it's not as much of a punch as a lot of my father cigars.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not like any of the ones with the colored foot bands on them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost more like the My Father original.
Yeah, and even I think even lighter than that though.
Okay,
I'm trying to think. It's strength wise from their portfolio. I would put it more along the lines of like the Flor de las Antillas.
I was thinking either that or the Fonseca.
Fonseca for sure. That's I think an all Nicaraguan blend. Yeah, so I'm trying to think of some of their cigars that this would be compared to. But San Cristobal's got a great portfolio, in my opinion. You have the original San Cristobal. You have the Elegancia is a great milder one, but even that's on the mild to medium side, I think.
Yeah.
This one came out, and I'll be honest, I enjoy this cigar a lot. It's just interesting because, like, from a retail standpoint, where we were at Tinder Box, it was something that just at that price point, it didn't sell. Like, we occasionally get someone to come in looking for it, but it's just not enough to keep boxes around to have on the shelf because it's just the San Cristobals in general don't sell as well from our vantage point. I mean, you got the La Roma de Cubas from them that sells like crazy. You got the Ashtons that sell like crazy still, even with the huge price increase that they went through.
Yeah, they sell a lot.
Yeah, the Ashtons.
Yes.
Now you travel a lot and see different cigar shops.
Yes.
Do you see this cigar? Do you see San Cristobal in general?
No.
Okay.
I gotta say, I was actually thinking about it. I keep thinking to myself, out of everywhere that I've gone, I've never seen. I'm someone I love to look for new things because I think at this point I've been smoking for, I'd say just a little over 2 years now. I would say I probably have somewhere in the ballpark of about 300 different cigars since day one.
Okay.
I have never seen this in any shop. Period.
Now you've had it. I'm interested. Just, I mean, not saying you're going to go buy a bunch, but just to see if it pops out, or you ask if they have any San Cristobals.
Yeah.
This is starting to build on me a little bit with the retro hail. Is anyone else getting that? I haven't sipped on the whiskey for a while.
Not yet. I haven't.
I would say. I mean, I don't do the retro hail, but I could definitely say it's building up for sure.
Okay.
100%.
Nate, if you want to blow your nose, you can cut your mic or something.
I'll mute myself.
Do you need allergy medicine?
I'll be all right.
Okay.
I would say the mosquitoes are getting to me. Like, I keep like touching my face and my neck.
Oh, dude, it's going to get 90 here and it's humid.
Yeah.
I still don't agree with everyone's like, yeah, but I mean, like out west, it's a dry heat. You know, that's not so bad. I'm like,
it's still bullshit.
It's still fucking hot.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a dry heat.
It's worse here because it is humid.
Okay, from someone, not for very long, but when I was younger, I did live in the Las Vegas area for a little while.
Sure.
And I will tell you, I will take a 120-degree day in Vegas than a 90-degree day here anytime.
100 maybe.
Anytime.
100 maybe. Last time I was in Vegas was, I think, 2016. Yeah. And it was like 110, 115.
Yeah.
It's miserable.
It's still hot, but like there's the humidity makes it so like, especially
it's like a sauna.
Which a sauna is better than being in a sweat box.
It is. Yeah. It's
like there's nothing worse than like it's hot. The wind isn't blowing as much. It's all sticky. It's stagnant, and it's just miserable to be around. Like, unless you're just in nothing but a pair of shorts or like a pair of swim trunks or something like that, it's like it's miserable. You walk around like a t-shirt. Like if I walk around in a t-shirt when it's 90 degrees outside, especially when the sun's out, like I'm drenched in sweat from top to bottom.
I mean, yeah, it's just starting to pour down my face a little bit here, even at 8 o'clock in the evening. It's not great. It's not great. Kind of a mess tonight. Mosquitoes over here. You got the nose running over here, and I'm sweating like crazy.
Welcome to Ohio.
Yeah, hopefully you're listening to the audio, not watching us. But this is building on me a bit. We did have a question here. That's a good question, Ray. Let me put it up here on the screen. Just a random question. You guys can throw anything out there. Is there an app out there for cigars, anything like Vivino for wine or whiskey for whiskey and bourbon? I don't know if those are for like references. The only ones, Google is still your best bet, I think, when you're searching for a cigar. There is an app out there that I know that I've recommended to some customers that are trying to kind of log what they've smoked. Cigar Scanner is one that I've used before. Cool. And basically the design of it, and it's not all the time, but you can actually take a picture of the like cigar band, like as you're like you have the cigar in your hand. And a lot of times it'll work. It's kind of a cool thing. I don't even know if it's still on my phone.
See what I do.
Cigar Scanner.
That's actually really smart because everything I've ever done.
So you do it like this, and no one's going to be able to do it. Take picture. You're not going to be sealed on screen. But if I do this, Use photo. See if it works. Oop, there you go. Boop. Check. Identifying your cigar.
No way.
Yeah, that's kind of how Vivino works.
Is it?
Yeah, you take a picture.
San Cristobal Quintessence. It pulls it up there.
Look at
Yep.
that.
Yeah, so it's called Cigar Scanner. I've got an iPhone, Ray. So it pulls up San Cristobal Quintessence, 4 out of 5 rating, 4.09 rating, and there's 1,100 ratings on it. U.S. retail, I think, is a little low. It says 950 to 11. I think it's higher than that. But then it gives you a basic description of it, some notes, and then some product photos. So kind of cool here.
It's called Cigar Scanner?
Cigar Scanner. No, it doesn't look like that. It may not even be on there anymore.
That's unfortunate.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, look, it had a leaf on there.
Had a leaf?
Cigar
it's called
Scanner.
Cigar Scan or Scanner?
Scanner. If it's not out there, I'm sorry, guys. That was a great one.
Someone needs to.
They might have gotten sued for something.
I usually just take pictures. I take pictures of every new cigar that I have. I always take a picture and add it to an album on my phone that's called Cigars, and I always have a rating from 1 to 10.
And you have your own little thing going there. I like that.
Yeah.
Anymore, yes. Google's, I still think, your best bet. Just do, San Cristobal Quintessence, and you can type in review if you want. But there's plenty of things out there, whether it be videos like this, but also just, different blogs. Halfwheel.com is a big one.
Is it more to help you find a cigar that's like, for example, let's say you like this one right here, like what more cigars that are like this to try? Like, is that really what it's for? Or is it more so just to identify what you have?
I think it's more to identify what you have.
Okay.
That would be
cool.
something.
That'd be cool to have something to be like, hey, I typically like to smoke this as a recommendation.
Other cigars you may enjoy.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that app's kind of like replace, it's helpful if you're at a cigar shop where either the employees are too busy with other customers or the employees don't know what the hell they're doing. And you're like, oh, so you don't know what the cigar is like. All right, cool. Let me scan it.
That does make a big difference.
Because I've literally had people in the wine shop, like they just want to sit there and, scan bottles that have point ratings tags on them. They just want to scan everything. And I've literally had people in there for an hour just scanning pictures of bottles and looking up reviews and stuff.
Yeah. Because
we don't necessarily have the little point shelf talkers for every bottle that's got points because it's up to the rep to put them up there. But yeah, I've had people come in and just start, scanning pictures of bottles and then just start filling a case with ones that got a certain number of points.
No, but that's interesting. It's kind of like, and maybe some of the online, not to necessarily encourage you to go online if you have brick and mortars nearby, but they might have like people also viewed this. People also bought this, kind of like they do on Amazon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So say you're on San Cristobal Quintessence and you read all the stuff, you go to different sizes. Even if you don't buy it, there might be some out there, and that makes sense that customers have also bought this. That's an easier, I think, like an algorithm thing that a shopping e-commerce site could do. But it is kind of cool because it does basically mimic what you do in some of the retail shops where it's like, so what do you like to smoke? You're like,
right.
I like the San Cristobal Quintessence. Oh, okay, you like that. What else? And get a couple, and you're like, all right, well, have you had this? This is going to kind of be in the same ballpark. Do you want to do something similar? But it would be nice to have an app that does something like that.
That is a good point. It'd be kind of cool to have almost like a questionnaire with all like the major points, like, like what type of, like, do you like Maduros? Do you like more Connecticut? Do you like them more mild, stronger flavor notes, to where it can literally identify based on what you click? Here's the recommendations. That'd be really cool.
I'm pretty sure there's people smarter than us with the AI out there right now, and like the whole chat GPT or whatever.
That stuff is insane.
I'm pretty sure they could get this done in a weekend. It's just such a small market. I don't know if there's a big ROI on that. Not yet. Nate, you like San Cristobal cigars?
Hit or miss. They're hit or miss for me. I do like the
my father.
I do like my father, but just like some of the blends for San Cristobal. Like to me, the Revelation's okay.
Okay.
The Elegancia, a little too light. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are mild cigars that I do smoke. That one doesn't stand out.
Okay.
But no, I mean, they're not ones that I generally go to in the humidor. Especially, something like this coming in at that price point. It's like, I can find something else that's Habano wrapper over Nicaraguan.
Yeah, it's a pretty common from surface level. Obviously, it's pretty common there.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find anyone else.
I'm asking, what are your go-tos?
BS. That's one.
That is a really good stick.
Espinosa 601 Blue, Laranja, Aroa 20-year Maduro.
Oh, okay.
And CBT. Yeah, so usually some fuller Maduro generally.
I like that.
Yeah, I love most of the Espinosas that I smoke. Also like a lot of Crown Heads as well.
Crown Heads, yeah. What about you? What are you, Steve? What are your go?
I'm all over the board. I'm all over the board. Like with San Cristobal staying on this brand, and maybe I'm mistaken. I'm looking stuff up. Everyone's saying that's around like anywhere $9 to $11. So maybe we haven't carried it in a while. So maybe I'm thinking the Ovation from La Roma de Cuba. I do just on the on paper, Ecuadorian Habano over Nicaraguan coming on my father factory. It's a home run. If I'll say this because I apologize. This was actually from the rep Alex, so I don't know the price point anymore. That's why we brought it on, just to kind of see what we thought of it. But if it's around the $10 price point, I think, $11, that's killer. $12 maybe. If it is 15 to 17, it's tough. That's a tough one because I think it smokes really, really well.
It does. It really does.
San Cristobal, I like the brand. I like a lot of stuff that my father cigars makes. I think Don Pepin has a reputation for a reason. He kills it. Absolutely kills it. And they use some great tobaccos. But go-tos for me, it is a lot in this range. I like medium-bodied cigars. I enjoy full-bodied cigars, but I've gravitated back towards, and I think it happens to quite a few people, is that you smoke the full-body stuff for a while. You kind of keep going up and up and up, kind of like with the whiskeys and the bourbons as well. You go that more barrel strength. We've talked about on the show. And I kind of, on a daily basis, I'll smoke more like medium to full, not full-bodied. Not so much mild. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the mild. Just on paper, again, this is not just every one of them, but a milder Connecticut shade Dominican cigar is not for my profile, even though it's probably the best-selling cigar profile or on paper, again,
right?
Blend
right
out there. It's just not for me. So I like anything from about this level. As far as, the Ecuadorian Habano, love that. Love the Nicaraguan tobacco. And I like the medium body to full bodied. So this is kind of my starting point. But this is something that you could smoke in the morning if you're smoking. You can smoke it after lunch. This one in particular, though, with the whiskey, and we'll get into the ratings towards the end of here at part one, but I think it's not a terrible match, but it almost is starting to get like a dryness to me. Maybe it's the humidity out here, but my tongue is kind of getting dry with this when I'm smoking it.
I would agree. You know what I do like about this though, and I don't know what your guys' experience is there's a lot of cigars, like once you smoke them, they have, after the flavor notes and stuff go through, they have like this bizarre like aftertaste. There's no aftertaste whatsoever with this one.
It's pretty clean.
It's very, very clean.
Construction's very good too.
It's almost as if like you didn't even realize you were smoking a cigar.
The only issue I've had with mine is there have been a couple times where as I'm drawing on the cigar, I can hear the wrapper crack.
Ooh.
Cracking?
Yeah. I've got 2 cracks on mine.
Oh, wow.
Blame our rep, Alex Jordan, for that.
If he's watching.
Excuse me. Because he was in yesterday.
Yeah, that's a big crack too.
Mine's flawless, so.
Mine's
flawless.
Yeah, I say mine's flawless.
2 out of 3.
Yep, 2 out of 3 is good.
We've had that happen too.
We have had that happen. What do you guys think of the pairing here initially? I feel like we're just breezing through this tonight. It's really, we've talked about San Cristobal before. We've talked about Michters. I think it's pretty straightforward part one.
Well, I mean, and we don't have a brand guest this week. Sometimes when we have a brand guest, we go real heavy part one on that particular aspect. And this one's like, all right, yeah, here's here's the lowdown on Michters. Here's the lowdown on this cigar. All right.
Unfortunately for me, I'm not really a whiskey connoisseur, but at the same time, this is the first time ever having this one. So I can't really speak on some of the other brands that I'm used to.
Yeah.
So, but I will say for Habano like this probably is the best Habano I've ever had. I would actually, maybe I'm crazy for saying this, but I would say this is just on par with Knuckle Sandwich Connecticut. And that's coming from someone who's an Espinosa fanatic. Yeah.
And Espinosa makes obviously some different Habanos, like the Knuckle Sandwich, the Espinosa Habano. He uses it on trying to think what else. The 601 Red. Yeah. Is a Habano.
Yep.
And for you guys out there, if you're not sure about obviously what that means, it's a lot of the times Habano, not only is it a seed, but it's something that people use as the marketing side of things. So they'll call a blend a Habano. So typically that's going to fall in the medium strength. People use Corojo, they use Sun-Grown. Sun-Grown's the more kind of generic term for that. And I think that I can appreciate when people are using the term Habano on the brand name or the blend name, because it's relevant. I mean, it does. And to you, Mike, it's someone that smokes a lot of cigars. And for those that are getting into it, when you see that on there, saying what you just said about this being the best Habano, you're not usually a Habano person, you could pass up some good cigars that you may enjoy because either it says Habano on there or you're like looking at like, oh, what's the San Cristobal? And you look it up and you're like, oh, it's an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper. No, I'm going to pass on that.
Right.
You would have never smoked it.
Exactly.
Nate, what are you thinking, man? Just staring at it.
Yeah, because the cracks keep spreading on it.
I feel like you're not a San Cristobal fan even more now.
Well, honestly, for the longest time, the reason I would always steer clear of San Cristobals was because of our old rep, like going back 10 years.
The other Alex?
Yes, that one. So I just wouldn't even buy or smoke anything from their portfolio.
You just didn't like the guy?
Yeah.
People do buy from people they like, and they don't buy from people they don't like.
Yeah, had some run-ins with him in the past, both as a rep and as a consumer.
Okay. Appreciate your restraint on the details of that, but I'm sure there's people out there who would love to know what you're talking about. But no, I think that's a good way to say it. But that's a good point. Obviously, it's just like if you had a cigar at a retail shop and you didn't care for the retailer or the people in the shop. I mean, that can give a sour taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
For that brand, and you're just like, nah, I just don't like it. You know, it brings up bad memories. I just don't care for it.
That's happened to me.
Has it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say because I'm fortunate enough to travel so many different states, I would say I've probably been to at least 50 different shops. And I will say the experience does make a difference. And I've always been a big believer in general, like wherever your mindset is at going into doing anything is going to dictate what you're looking for. You know, if you're having a bad experience with something, especially if it's at a retail shop, you're going to be subconsciously looking for like, okay, what's the problem with this? Because you just had a bad experience versus, for example, when I go into Tinder Box, right? Like I remember some of the first couple of times I went in there, the best thing that ever happened was, hey, what do you like to smoke? Like, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like, you guys are so educated and you guys actually care about getting the best cigar for what you enjoy. And that alone already gets you a little bit excited when you get a great experience, which makes you makes you experience it even better. I think like we're all distracted right now.
Yeah, Sean's doing something out there.
He's probably doing
snake out there.
He's probably doing a TikTok or something.
You have
rabbits.
You have snakes in your yard?
No, he did. He lives in the back of the neighborhood. So
all right,
keep him there.
But anyways, yeah, I would say that definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
There's been a couple shops I've been into and like no one would even say a word to me. And if when I come to have to pick something out and they have to go in the case and get it, it's almost like you're an inconvenience to them. I'm like,
why are you open?
Yeah, why
how are you open? How are you open?
Well, it's also like on the flip side of that, you have the guys like, yeah, the best cigar I ever smoked, was something I bought off the beach when I was in Cancun. And it's like, well, you were in Cancun on a beach and you probably had a dozen daiquiris before that point. So yeah, everything was tasting good at that point.
Yep, I've heard a few of those.
Can confirm.
Those two.
Not the beach cigar thing, but the daiquiris and my Miami Vices and
yeah,
cigars tasting better on the resort.
Just everything's good. Everything's better.
Like the worst for me is when I go in, I ask for something specific, and like, well, have you ever tried this one? And I'm like, yeah, I have, and it's okay, it's good. But then it's like you insult them.
Do you have?
It's like they feel insulted if you don't take the recommendation.
Oh, so I never do in that side of things. It's more of people that are like, I know nothing about cigars, or I'm buying for someone else and I don't know what they like, and you spend 5 minutes with them, and happens a lot around the holidays or like Father's Day or something, which is coming up. But it's you kind of walk them through like, oh, samplers here's mild meat. What do you think? You spend about 5 minutes with them. I could care less, especially if they're going to be buying something. You know what I mean? It's frustrating if they don't buy anything, but whatever. That's part of the game. But they literally they listen to everything, and they're just looking around as you're pointing stuff out, and they're almost like still just shopping for themselves. And then they're like, I'll take that one. You're like, oh, one of the ones we didn't talk about at all. So you confirm that you know nothing about cigars, but you bought that one. Okay. I don't say it. You're just like, sounds good. I'll be right back. Let me go grab that for you.
I had one at my old shop. A guy said, well, here's 3 cigars I like. I want you to pick me something different. And I started asking him questions like, all right, well, where do you want to go? You want to go lighter, stronger? And he's like, different. 3 cigars. I'm like, okay, but like, what are you in the mood? He goes, nope, just pick out 3 cigars. If I don't like them, you won't see me again.
Okay. Coming right up.
Yeah.
Done.
Like
subconsciously, I'm sitting there going, I hope he doesn't like these cigars. That way I never have to see him again.
It's just, that's one of the types of scenarios where you don't even want to have to deal with things like that sometimes. Like that's just what's going on.
Sean, I think so. Nothing. This is just part of the.
Oh,
you do a podcast in your garage. You have stuff going on.
Yeah, that's my attention deficit kicking in right now.
Like, wait, what's everything all right? Everything
like squirrel. No, but that's definitely one of those scenarios where when you get people who are difficult like that and just so egotistical, it's almost as if like, if they don't come back, it's one less headache you have to deal with.
Yeah. It's you just do what you can.
Right. That's all you can do.
Last little cigar etiquette thing that I find funny, and I've been getting it for some reason a lot lately, and it's I want something cheap. And you're like, okay, what are you thinking? Like, just like, what are you like lower price point cigars? And you're like, yeah, no problem. It's right over here. Here's one for, $4.95. Here's one for, $3.50. And like mid conversations, I'm talking about them. It's like, well, I want something good though. And you're like,
yeah, I've had that.
How do we navigate through this conversation?
I witnessed that at Tinder Box last time I was there. Yeah, Josh was helping out I think it was like a mom and son, and they came in and they were like, we want something good, but like that's really cheap. And I think Josh looked kind of confused, like, well, I think it was like the Newman cigars or something like that.
The HH.
Yeah, the HH. Yeah. Like that's pretty much the option. Like, and it looked like they were like confused as like, well, this like is this good enough? This is not good enough. And like, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm trying to like contain myself. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how is this even happening right now?
We had a customer at Carfagna's. He always comes. Him and his wife always come in on Thursday nights because there's no corkage fee for taking bottles from the store into the restaurant, and everything he gets is like $10 to $12 bottle. And he was looking for a Spanish wine in that price point, and he grabs an $11 Tempranillo, takes it over to the bar. They open it. They pour it into a glass, and he sniffs the glass. He goes, "Oh my gosh, that smells terrible." So first, we're thinking that the bottle's corked, and so bring it over. And my director pours it into a glass, and he smells it. He's like, "It smells fine." He goes, "It tastes fine. It's an $11 Tempranillo. What the hell do you expect?" Like, there are people that have $50 mindsets, but $10 budgets.
Sure, no, I get it. I digress on that stuff. We can talk all night.
I will say though, the price point does matter. Like when I first started smoking, I was that guy. I'll admit, I was getting little cheap stuff from every little thing that I can. And when I started dipping into some of the more higher price ones in my mind, I'm like, do I really want to spend at that time $12, $13 for a stick?
Sure, yeah.
But I will say, once you try those, it does make a significant difference.
I would say a lot of times it does. Just like anything else, though, it's like even like whiskeys here, or like you were talking about wines, Nate, cigars, same way. There is the other side of the coin where you have, like, say, a pricier, whatever widget it is, cigar, $50 cigar, and you get the question, well, is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, so now you're at the other side of it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I get that.
It's not 10 times as good as, like, it doesn't. The math doesn't work like that. You know, it's say you have a say a $25 cigar, a $50 cigar is not necessarily twice as good as that. You know, we get those questions a lot too. Is you know, what's the best cigar, or do you have a recommendation for a cigar? And you're like, well, what, you have to do the qualifying questions. You know, what's the most expensive cigar? And that's what it is right now. And well, is it worth it? And it's like, the wrong person to ask, man. I mean, if you like it, then yeah. You know, if you end up not liking it, no. But that's about it. I mean, just same thing as a $5 cigar. If you didn't like a $5 cigar or a $10 or $11 bottle of wine, is it worth you? No, it's not worth it.
That's true.
You know, drinking that, worth or value is obviously in the eye of the palate of the beholder, if you will, because that's something that if, like, you know, that person wants a $10 to $12 bottle of wine, all right, you bought an $11 wine and you didn't like it. If you bought a $20 bottle of wine that you did like, that's worth it. It's not a quantity thing necessarily.
Yeah, because I get that question a lot, because we have a cabinet that has some of the rare, special, allocated type of wine bottles, and people always ask, like, is that bottle really worth $1,800?
Yeah.
And it's like, to the right person, absolutely it is. But it's more because, like, they went there, there's a story behind it, they know the story, they've met the winemaker and stuff like that. But, you know, and they only do so many bottles of that wine a year. Like, I think for that particular brand, if you get on the waiting list for the allocation, you're going to wait about 12 years before you get a bottle.
Right.
Yeah, and you know it's not worth it if they're out of business and they stop making that wine.
I kind of have a story to kind of piggyback off of that. Is
go ahead.
So, like, my landlord, who I rent my condo from, he is a bourbon concierge, bourbon snob.
Okay.
And I kind of mentioned, I know I didn't bring it with tonight, but so Kirkland makes a small batch, which it was so it's basically Barton Distilleries makes it. They only release it every other year. And so, long story short, how I got into that was my father-in-law was trying to help ask me to hunt down some of these bottles. Like, check Costco all the time. When they get them, they get one drop per year. Only certain stores get them, and they're usually gone within 2-3 days. And so it took like 2 years of constantly going to Costco to finally find some. And so the first time,
so many random items you probably purchased in those trips.
Oh, totally.
It's Costco, man.
Costco gets you every time. Every time.
Could have bought a bottle of Pappy for those trips.
And that's the thing. So
I don't really need more socks, but it's a great deal.
So what happened was I finally found some, and I got 2 bottles. No, yeah, I got 2 bottles, and then I decided to try to go back. They were already sold out, and there was only one store left. It was in Maryville that had a couple left. This was in a 1 week's time. Like, everyone was sold out. They all started off with 50-something like bottles of it. Every place got wiped out. So when I got the bottle for myself, because I'm like, you know what, they're all this hype, I'm going to try it for myself. I want to see what this is all about. So I tried it. Again, I'm not the biggest bourbon guy. This stuff, like, will knock your socks off. It is, in comparison to this, it is significantly, I would call it spicier, stronger, all that. And so I invited my landlord over. He didn't know I bought him a bottle. And so I'm like, you got to come over and try this. He goes, man, I got so many different bottles. He's got bottles of Pappy Van Winkle. Like, he's got stuff that he'll sell secondary for like $500, $1,000 a bottle. And like, you got to at least come try this. And here he is. He comes in, you know, it's just a sniff test, does a whole sip, swishing it around. And he has said it himself. He goes, this is unbelievable. He goes, this is on par with the easy $500-$600 bottle of bourbon. And it's $29.95 for a whole liter.
Oh.
For a liter.
And that's what you were supposed to bring?
And my ADD. It's funny. Like, I'm literally walking out the door. Because I left on, I left on Tuesday, and I'm coming back home on Friday. I'm like, I'm packing everything, I'm getting everything ready to go, and I'm walking out the door. I'm like, why do I feel like I'm forgetting something? Then when I message you on Instagram, like, you bring that bottle, I'm like, oh,
shit.
But anyways,
I have not had.
It kind of goes back to that point though, that you guys were talking about, is that I kind of lost my train of thought there already.
The value.
Yeah, the value.
Yeah,
the value. So just because something has a super high price tag doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best that's out there.
40.
Yeah.
Well, still, yeah. I mean, secondary market's the obviously the big thing. Is Blanton's worth $200? No, in my opinion, no. Unless you're going to make more money off of it, there's no purpose of that.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
Let's get back on track here real quick with this part 1 where we do the ratings. So this is where we kind of give, there's a 10 is the best. We give 3 ratings: the whiskey, the cigar, and the pairing. And I will, Sean, you want to go first? Jesus Christ. You know, you've been busy eating, working. Mike, how about you?
You know what? For the cigar, even though I typically go for more of the stronger Maduros, I'm going to give this a solid 8.
Okay. Nice.
I'm actually really, really impressed with this. I didn't know anything about the brand beforehand, so I'm not biased with that.
Yep.
I will say I'd give this a solid. This would be one I would probably, if I came into the shop and I was looking for something different than I typically get, I would go for this.
Nice.
This has been very enjoyable. And as I said, for the whiskey, out of all the whiskeys I had, this is definitely, surprisingly, it's strong and it's really smooth, and I love the fact that it tastes like Teddy Grahams. I'm going to give this a 9.
It's like what?
Teddy Grahams. Yeah.
I didn't know whiskey could taste like Teddy Grahams.
Oh, yeah.
You'd be surprised.
I'm missing out.
Nate, how about you?
Oh, he didn't do his pairing.
Oh, the pairing. Yeah, you got an 8 and a 9. How about the pairing together?
I'm going to say a 9. I feel like these go very well hand in hand. Out of some of the other pairings that I've done in the past, and I haven't done a ton,
Right.
this is probably got to be pretty close to the best pairing I've ever had. I would say when I paired, like, for example, I paired the Kirkland and the bourbon, this is significantly, from a pairing perspective, this is that bourbon completely overthrew any cigar that I paired it with.
Okay.
And so this is a very good pairing.
All right. Nice. Nate?
For me, because the construction issues on the cigar, I mean,
That is not a pretty sight over there.
Yeah,
It's heartbreaking.
yeah. I mean, it's bad. So it's still smoking fine.
Yeah,
but
it's still smoking.
For now, if I take this band off, it's gonna blow up.
Smoke through the band.
I may have to. It's gonna taste real funky here in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
No, because of that construction issue, I'm a 6.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sean took your good one. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, we well, it's my fault. I divvied them out.
That's fair.
And we've had that happen on the podcast too, where we smoked. You and I were on just the two of us, and we smoked a cigar that we've smoked dozens, if not hundreds of times, and we both got bad ones that were plugged and couldn't draw.
I'll say this about the construction thing: that cracking is extremely frustrating.
Oh yeah,
more frustrating to me though is a plug cigar.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh no.
Because you can try a draw poker, you can try something, but with that, yes, it's frustrating, especially if you spend good money on it, right? Whether it be $10, $20, whatever it is. With it coming apart like that, it's not. Luckily, it looks like it's not really like in your teeth. It's like just below where you're smoking on it.
Yeah.
Which I've had the opposite, and it's not necessarily falling apart. So you're halfway through a fairly long cigar. This is like a Churchill size. If it's plugged, it can look as pretty as it wants.
Yeah,
it was one, but it's the worst.
I'd almost rather deal with a plug cigar than one that's got a really bad tunnel in it, because recently I had a cigar. I've given it multiple tries where I've lit it up and like I can pull through it easy enough, like it's fine.
Yeah,
but and you can see that it's on fire at the end, but there's absolutely no smoke whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you can just see a tunnel that you can like stick a pencil
down
the middle of the cigar.
Ooh.
And I can cut an inch into that cigar and still see where it's burning.
That's bad.
And I've had that happen a few times. And so there's a couple cigars out there that I'm real leery of trying again. Because it's like, no.
And I think that kind of adds back to that point where it comes to like the value of it. Like when it comes to the experience, like it takes one time to have like a really bad draw or like cracking like that, and it'll make you not want to try it again.
Yeah. Or it's like some of the bottles Steve and I have had. We've talked about it before. There's one particular brand. We've had 4 different bottles. They're all single barrels from that brand. 3 of them we didn't like. 1 we did.
Yeah.
Well, is it worth, spending $60 and getting it again? Well, if you walk through a door 4 times and 3 out of the 4 times you got punched in the face, would you walk through the door again? Probably not.
What's on the other side of that door?
Find a different door.
What's on the other side?
Something that punches you in the face.
All right.
Yeah, there's 2 cigars specifically that I was really excited to try. And I tried each of them, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each one.
Yeah.
Every single one has been the same exact issue.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say the names of the.
Yeah, you don't have to.
But
you don't have to.
Yeah. But it's kind of and I say that because I stayed away from the brand entirely until I finally tried one that I actually absolutely felt was Rocky Patel.
Okay.
So.
All right, you threw some sunshine on it there. Okay.
Yeah. So like the first 2 Rocky Patels that I had. I have to say it, like the 60 and then the Disciple. I think it's Disciple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so both of them I've had such bad experiences with, but the vintage 92 is actually now one of my favorites.
There you go.
It's great. It's a great stick.
Nice. Nate, you had what was on the cigar? 7, 6,
6 on the cigar because of the construction. Yeah, it just keeps getting worse. 8 on the whiskey. This is one of those that when people come in and they're looking for something that's a little bit on the lighter side, maybe something a little sweeter.
Yeah.
Instead of, because some people kind of steer clear from some bourbons just because there's, heavy hitters and they just wreck your palate. This would be, for someone who wants something a little on the sweeter side, something a little bit lighter. And then the pairing, flavor wise, I give the pairing an 8.
Okay.
I think they do go well together because the whiskey's got enough sweetness, and I think that kind of combats a little of that dryness that you get from the cigar that you talked about, Steve.
Yeah.
So I think they go well together, but I just unfortunately got a bad draw on the cigar.
Yeah. Ray threw out. No, I think you did. I mean, mine's fine.
Yeah.
Mike's is fine. I've not had many issues with San Cristobal. That's a good question before Sean and then I rate. I'll put it up on the screen here for you guys. Let's see. This is a cigar shop etiquette thing here, and there's no right answer, I'd say, because I'm not going to say it's bad for. It's the shop, right? And depends on the circumstances. So this is, if I came into the shop and bought that cigar that Nate has, smoked it in the shop, would you replace it? We have talked about this before. Typically, it's one of those things. If you're a regular, I'm not saying you treat people different. If you're a regular, you want to look at it and you kind of say, I would normally say, like, let's see how bad it gets. I mean, if it's just like it has a crack, whatever, is it smoking okay? Yeah, it is. Whatever. Like, that's fine. First timer or someone that, just whatever. Mike comes in, he's second time in, first time in, whatever, in town. And he comes in and he first of all, the customer has to say something, which I don't say it's how you say it, but I mean, I've had experiences where the person is I mean, where Nate is halfway through the cigar, if not 3/4 through the cigar, somewhere 2/3 through the cigar. And they come back up and you're like, hey, this is starting to come apart. It's like, that's tough.
I think it does
it's
matter.
tough.
The approach matters and how it's handled.
And I think if a cigar blew up like right in the middle of the cigar and started flaking all over the place, that's one thing. Where mine's at, it's from between the band and the head. So like I can still draw through it. I can still smoke through it. Like it.
Honestly, my response to like Ray or to like Nate or Mike or anyone is, I'll look at it. If I'm walking by and I see it, I'm like, is that smoking okay? That seems to be coming apart all right. And sometimes customers say, no, it's still smoking. It's fine. I know it happens. There are other people that'll be like the smallest little defect. Say it's not cracking, but say like at one point in the wrapper leaf, it kind of came unglued or like, started coming up. It's like,
I don't think it's a black and white answer.
Typically, yes. I'll say it like this, right? Typically, yes. If it was smoking like that and falling apart, yes, I, as a cigar shop manager, would replace the cigar for you if I'd offer to.
Yeah.
I'd offer to.
There's actually,
it's not the same as like if a steak comes out cooked wrong, you take a cut into it, take a bite, and you say, or maybe not take a bite, but flag someone over and be like, hey, I ordered this medium rare. This is pretty well done. Yeah. That's a little different in my opinion. Because once again, the restaurant actually prepared the steak. There's action there. It's not always necessarily like that cigar
Steve
came out
didn't roll this cigar.
Not only that, but I mean, it happens.
Yeah,
it happens. A box of 20 cigars. It's not uncommon that one will not be perfect.
There actually is one shop in town that they actually have a sign behind their register. So if there's a cigar that's plugged or cracks or anything like that, like they won't do anything.
Really?
They actually have it posted. Like that happens. It's a handmade product. Like sometimes that happens.
That's not
okay, because I know for a fact that if you are, especially, I mean, if you're buying from a distributor, you're probably SOL. But if you're buying from the manufacturer, like if that happened right there, it had happened more than once. And I said something to say, Alex, our rep, hey man, the San Cristobal Quintessence, like we're having some major issues with that, and probably have a conversation. How many? And like we've gone through like say 2 boxes, and I'd say probably 5 to 10. We've had issues with that I've had to replace cigars. They'll try to make that right.
Yeah.
So it's not on that shop again, unless they're buying from either distributor that won't do that for him. But that's always something that's a little bit nicer for going into a shop that works directly with the manufacturers, directly through the, works through San Cristobal or Ashton. You're going to have some grace there.
So, I mean, I can chime in a little bit with this is normally what I'll do, and this has only happened to me a few times. More often than not, to your point, sometimes it does happen. And more often than not, you can usually smoke through it. Is it like the best experience you're ever going to have? No, but you can still smoke it and still enjoy it.
Yeah.
What I've done in the past is any time that's happened, I understand that, you know what, it's a crack. Let's see how this goes. Only when it gets to the point where it's like, I literally am not going to be able to finish this. And it's not even halfway through. And like, it's visible that I think there's a difference. I think sometimes there can be user error. Sometimes the way you cut it.
That's a big one. Like
there's definitely user errors in how you handle it and stuff like that. I feel like there's a lot of people, especially newbies, that don't know how to really do that, to where I think that can make a difference. And I the only times I've ever asked for it is when it's gotten to the point where like, and I don't just go up and be like, hey, can you replace this? I'm like, hey, it's like, you check this out. Like this is really starting to crack.
I want to make you aware of it.
I tried my best to smoke through it, but I think this is really going to be difficult to smoke.
Yeah.
That would be a scenario where like, okay, clearly it was a construction issue.
Not to play on the other side. Yeah, when like you offer to cut the cigar for them, if they cut the cigar, I'm not saying they're all bad, but sometimes there are people that have been smoking for 15, 20 years. They're older, not older, but like 40, 50, they're not newbies necessarily, but they cut them, and they're the ones that really squeeze the cigars. They really like think they know what they're doing. They have a very particular preference on how cigars are. However they learn that, they'll cut it. Typically it'll be like right below the cap or at the cap, and it'll come apart, and they're like, oh, these are all dry. This is no good. Like, can you get me something else? It's like, sir, ma'am, you cut that below the cap.
Yep.
That's how I always cut my cigars.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. But there are times, again, as a business, you take the hit and you say, tell you what, I'll grab you another one if you allow me to cut it for you. And I mean, you can say it as nice as you want. If they want to be offended by it, that's up to them. You're not going to make everyone happy. Right. But that's the way I would handle that situation. Ray says he had this happen a couple minutes in, and it basically completely came apart. It's a $30 Cuban cigar at a place, and they would not replace it. He's never been back to the shop. That's the gamble you take as the retailer, right? Is if you do replace it, you can never make them happy possibly. So you lose out on, say, another $30 cigar that you do offer to replace, and they're still not happy with it. You do take it back into your control a little bit and say, tell you what, I'd be happy to do that. Let me cut it for you if you don't mind. And then you can see, hopefully you'll have better luck with it.
Yeah, I had one customer who went to punch cut his cigar, and instead of doing like nice and easy, kind of just shoved it, and I could hear it crack.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and he takes it out of the cedar that it was in, and he's, oh man, this cigar is busted. I'm like, yeah, I heard you bust it. Like you sat there and just rammed that punch cutter into the head of it, and I could hear it crack.
Always do it like that.
And he's like, well, can you replace it? I'm like, if you took that cigar, walked into the parking lot, and spiked it onto the concrete.
Is it a Tinder Box you do this?
No, This
Okay.
was not at the Tinder Box.
Good. Good. Cool.
I was like, if you spike this into the parking lot, would you expect me to replace it? No. It's the same concept.
Wow.
That's a good point. I like that.
It's interesting customer service there. I like that.
I mean, I know from experience too, especially, and this happens to me more often than I like to admit, especially when I'm driving, because I do a lot of driving for work, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly, like, if I'm driving, I'm cutting a cigar, like, while I'm driving, like, just because I'm focused on the road and stuff like that, sometimes I'll realize I know when I've accidentally miscut it, and like it starts to unravel at the top. I'm like, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh man, it's a crap cigar. Like, no, it's my fault. Like, I was the one who did it. I think there's not enough people
it's irrational
that don't take responsibility for their own errors.
Yeah.
And they just want to immediately blame everything else and everybody else rather than realizing, no, it's okay. Like, you cut it wrong. That's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it. Sean, back to you here though with the ratings. You did light your cigar?
Yes, I've had a chance to enjoy it.
So your feet are kicked back.
Yes, I'm
feeling good.
I'm feeling great now.
Had
Thank
some
you.
little Jersey
You look,
mics.
you look really comfortable.
I am. I'm very now. I'm very. The cigar I really enjoy. It's got a little bit of a spice on the retro hair, which I'm okay with. It's got a little spice to me for it, but I would give the cigar an 8.5. So far, so good with mine. Everything's still staying intact. Good construction. Good burn. The bourbon, I'm going to give a 9. This shit is good.
Wow. Yeah. Nice.
It's good stuff, man.
Go well with Doritos.
Excellent. And
I think anything
Jersey
goes
Mike's,
good with Doritos.
Jersey Mike's Italian with the chase down with a little bourbon. Just
Okay. Yeah. A little.
No, it was good.
Oil and vinegar, Mike's way. All right.
Yeah, I like it. It was. Wait, am I rating Jersey Mike's or am I rating? Sorry. All right.
If you want to throw it in sandwich,
why not?
No, but yeah, I'd give that a 9. Pairing, I'll probably give it 8.5 as well. I think there's that whole, cigar is a little more spicier than the bourbon. So every time we ever come across that, we're one spicier, they kind of, they kind of like complement each other, So
nice.
I will say though, you guys are talking about the tunneled cigars. I remember when Jake was on a few weeks ago, I had one, man, and it was like, it probably went 2 or 3 inches like deep as a tunnel. And I remember it kept ashing and just burnt ash just kept flying out of the cigar. It was crazy. But then he had a whole box. So he gave me another one and it was
Perfect.
fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So crazy.
I will say, I'm traditionally a really fast smoker, so I'm trying to take my time. This final third, the pepper kicks you right in the face all over again.
You retro now?
No. The sad part is I've tried to do it and I don't know
Talking
how
about
to do it.
retrohaling, your mic's not on anymore. I don't think so. It's all right. You said you try to do it. You can't.
Every time I do, I just inhale and I cough like crazy.
Every
time. I think we had this conversation last time. Like, you were kind of showing me how to do it. And every time I try to do it, I can't do it.
Once you do it, you can't stop. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So for me, the whiskey, like the comments going through right now, the whiskey for me, I'd give it an 8.5. It's a good bottle. I'm not as in love with it, I think, than some of the people drinking it here in the garage, but it is nice. I'd say it's just high of average price right now. You said 48, so call it $50 for this bottle. I think the other Michters in Ohio are around that price as well.
$44.99.
So
yeah,
I'll actually, I think this is more like what something you would do, Nate, and compare it to some of their other bottles, because you typically, it's just natural sometimes to do. And so this one being more expensive and liking the bourbon, liking the rye, this one's good. I think if I went back to buy a bottle of Michter's, I'd probably buy one of the other ones again. But I still rate it, an 8.5. I think it's a good bottle. I enjoy this. And again, the joking, but it is like the Teddy Grahams, especially in the beginning, taking sips of this before the cigar, and I'll get into that with the pairing side of it, but I think I liked the first couple sips of this bottle better than the second glass, in my opinion. The cigar on the other side, tough one for me. I really like this cigar. It is a good cigar. I'm going to give it an 8 because I think it's well constructed for mine. I think it's good flavor. I think it is a bit complex. It got peppery. Now I'm midway through it. It's not as peppery. Mike's saying that it picks back up. I think this is a very nice, delicate blend. It's kind of just, it's an 8. It's medium bodied. It's a Habano wrapper over Nicaraguan. It's a nice cigar. It's just not blowing me away. with this. And I think that might be why, thinking back, we haven't picked it back up at the shop at Tinder Box at Easton quite yet. I think this is a cigar that it's good, but it's not very impressionable on people. It's not a, I got to get a box of these or a 5-pack, right? It's a good cigar.
It's a dime a dozen on the shelves.
Yeah, I'd smoke it again. I'd probably buy it again. I'm not going to be running back to light up another. So that's where the 8 comes in. But objectively, I think this cigar is a very complex cigar. It's very delicate as far as the blend, like I said earlier. And I think it's got a nice transition, a nice journey in the smoke. So that's why 8's still a very good rating for me on this show. I think the pairing, I'm telling you, going back and forth between the cigar and the whiskey to the cigar, it's good. I think it's better going from the whiskey to the cigar as opposed to vice versa. I think going from the cigar, smoking that a little bit, and going back to the whiskey, I said it earlier, Mike, I know you agreed. It was kind of like my tongue started getting a little dry. So I don't know. I think it's just the way that transitions. But if you stick with the whiskey for a couple sips, let the cigar sit, I tend to enjoy the whiskey again a little bit more. So I'd say with the pairing, I'd give the pairing, I'm kind of opposite than a lot of you guys. I'm kind of in that 7.5, 8 range for me, because I think that it's not a smooth pairing, depending on if I'm going from the cigar to the whiskey, not as good. Going from the bourbon, or not the bourbon, but the whiskey to the cigar, I'd say the rating is a little bit better, if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah. And we've had that with other combinations as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's just the way it goes. I think the way it goes. Sometimes it's good both ways, and sometimes it's good, like right now, the whiskey, I'm taking a sip of it by itself, and it's back to a little bit more of that original flavor for me. That being said, guys, thank you very much for tuning in to part 1. Thanks to our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. They do carry San Cristobal, La Roma de Cuba, Ashton. Those are the 3 brands in their portfolio. Not the Quintessence at the moment, but check it out for some of their others. And then also Altadis USA, we're going to be lighting up the H. Upman in part 2, the Heritage Nicaragua from AJ Fernandez. And looking forward to that. BS Cigar Company, the Gold and Silver are available. And you guys out there at patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. And those that have contributed through Venmo at Bourbon and BS. Share, like, review, enjoy the podcast. Tune in every Wednesday night live, or listen to it at your convenience, either by the video on Facebook or YouTube, or you can listen to the audio as well. So, guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. We'll take a quick intermission. We'll come back for part 2.
We got an empty glass.
You got to pour a little bit, just a touch. You can't cheers with an empty glass.
Steve.
Cheers. Perfect. There we go.
Nice.
Cheers, guys. Okay, clear. We stay live.
Cool.
But whenever you're ready, if you need to use the restroom, you need to do anything.
You know what? That would be fantastic.
All right.
It's my fault.
It's all good. All right, for you guys that are listening for the first time live on the show, this does not show up on the audio, but you guys are welcome to ask any questions right now while we take a quick intermission before part 2. Oh, tweaked my elbow a couple weeks ago doing an arm workout at the house because I didn't feel like going to the gym, and all I have is 40-pound dumbbells. This is what we're doing.
You want my bands back?
No, because I don't do it very often. I was laying on the ground, and I did like skull crushers. I'm like, oh, that felt good with 40s, And then I do the inside. The left elbow did not like that. I just picked up that bottle, and I have a twinge on it still. I'm like, son of a bitch. It happens.
See, I found my old pairs of bands.
No, that was. Now, when they lock it down in a couple of years, I'll probably borrow them again. Hey, how are we doing over there? How's the allergies?
All right.
I was curious what your tasting profile was going to be. How that was going to go.
I can still taste.
Good. What's everyone drinking out there? If anyone's drinking anything out there. We had Justin Turner on here. Kristen's on there. Loving the whiskey talk, the cigar talk.
Looked like Austin was at Echo.
Nice.
And we're going to have them on in a few weeks.
We are going to have Echo on in a few weeks. We're not going to have a show next week. unfortunately, I have to, not unfortunately, unfortunate on the timing, but I have to go to, my niece is graduating high school. So I have to go, I get to go to, watch how I say that. I get to go to a graduation party. So very important. Want to support her and the family. And
Where'd she go to high school?
she is graduating from Columbus Academy here in town.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So no, we're still just talking to the people just hanging out.
You ever been there? Like, checked it out?
Columbus Academy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sick. Yeah.
I used to play soccer over there. And swam in their pool once. It's like fucking campus.
It is a campus. So it's
What's the campus?
Columbus Academy, where my niece is graduating. That's what I was saying. We're not doing a show. Ray's headed to, it's last week before heading to the UK. You can tune in the following week from the UK. I think they have internet there now. You guys ready?
I'm ready.
Nate, you tell me when you're ready.
You guys finishing those ones first, or we lighten up this other guy?
You can light up yours. I'm going to finish mine. It's totally fine. Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really excited for this.
Have you smoked it?
No.
Oh, perfect.
So long story short, again, because my soon-to-be father-in-law, he's the one who got me into cigars in the first place.
Okay.
And one of the ones that he was talking about, he wanted to try and get was this one, but was it the Connecticut version?
So they had the what was it? Not the Hispaniola. They did an Upman with the yellow band.
Yeah.
Drawing a blank what it is.
It was just like this was like a teal band.
Oh,
So
that's
the teal's
that's
in
the
Nicaragua.
original.
That's
Okay, that's
yeah.
the Nicaraguan.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
the
good
Upman
cigar.
Nicaragua by AJ. This is the Upman Nicaragua by AJ Heritage.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so he kept talking up that one.
We have that at the shop.
I almost bought one. I almost wanted to try one.
It's good.
That's the thing is going back to this cigar right here. I would think this is gonna be a really good option for someone that, even for like myself, if I know what my staples are, I know what I typically like to go to. But if I want to try something different, I just want something different, maybe not something as heavy as I normally like.
Sure.
This would definitely be an option I'd go with.
There you go. It's good. That's why we do it. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 272, part 2, Beyond the BS. Tonight we were smoking. I'm still smoking. Nate is eating his. Are you going to stick with that, or are you going to go to the next one?
Oh, I'm gonna try and suffer through this one as long as possible.
You're going to try to enjoy it.
So I have a question for you. So when this happens toward the latter end, do you actually peel it off, or you just smoke right through it?
If I peel it off, I might as well just throw it away.
Yeah, you notice it makes a big difference.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes when I get to where it's getting to burn that, I will, and it is a slippery slope, I'll try to like just a little chip off of there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not, especially like if I'm driving or whatever, I don't want it to flake off.
Oh no, that whole.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole wrapper is off.
Ooh,
That's
that's
tough.
really bad.
So that being said, if you're listening just to part 2, you want to listen to our review of the cigar that we're smoking. That was part of the conversation, was that Nate, unfortunately, did not have the best constructed cigar, where Mike and I did. Sean's was fine so far.
I'm just not getting a lot of smoke pulling from it.
Your mic's off.
Man, you've gone through a lot of that cigar in a very short amount of time too.
That's usually what I do.
All right, so part 1, we smoked the San Cristobal Quintessence. Thank you to Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. And also thank you to Alex Jordan with Ashton, San Cristobal, and La Roma de Cuba. That was from him. He doesn't know we're smoking it tonight, so I'm going to have to tell him that because it was kind of a last-minute audible. We wanted to feature it and see what we thought of it, see if we want to bring it back in. Altadis USA, the H. Upman, Nicaragua. We were just talking about the AJ Fernandez Heritage, which is one of the newer releases within the last year plus. Nice, fuller-bodied cigar there. Check out Altadis with H. Upman, Monte Cristo, Romeo Julieta, Aging Room, Butera, a handful of others. Great portfolio. Check them out, and thank you for the continued support. Also, Be a Cigar Company, the Gold and Silver are available now through Tinder Box at Easton, as well as a couple other shops here locally. So check those out. The Silver also has a limited edition 6x60 size from that's made by Espinosa. The gold is made by Plasencia.
I did smoke one of those Sunday.
What'd you think?
Smoked very well.
Yep.
Because like sometimes with the 6.5 by 58, like I would have issues just keeping it lit.
Mm-hmm.
No, this one, and that's why I typically prefer the Rubido in the BS Silver. No issues whatsoever on the 660.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for it.
It smokes really well.
Really
so
excited.
check that out while supplies last. And then also patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, or also not Patreon, on Venmo, sorry, at Bourbon and BS. If you guys want to contribute to the show, we appreciate that. Keeps it going. As I was listening, I got the alert that, you know, our monthly podcast posting withdrawal came out. You know what I mean? Like, it's normal, like just things that we pay to do the show for you guys and for us. So we appreciate all that support in the past, currently, and in the future. We appreciate everything from you guys. Just had to buy a new laptop for this. So
it's a really nice laptop.
Thanks, man. Brand new. Hopefully I can write it off for the podcast somehow. Still a little gray there. Got a good accountant though. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, still costs money. Mm-hmm. But we appreciate that, guys. Tonight's topic, I think I put it on here. It's fucking hot. That's not the topic, but it's summer again is what I actually picked. And this is something we do sometimes on the season changes, right? Kind of keep it vague, see what you guys want to talk about, those that are listening, and see what you guys are planning for. You're grinning over there, Nate.
It's still spring, technically, by the calendar.
Does it feel like spring?
No.
All right.
We haven't had rain in
It's summer again. All right.
Well, no, because it was funny because when we did it's spring, it was decent, mild weather, and then the next week it was like fucking 40 degrees.
Right. So maybe we'll get a little relief after doing this podcast. All right. I put down on the description here, what have we learned since last summer? This is just for you guys personally. This is where we go again beyond the BS. You guys out there in the audience, feel free to chime in as well. And hopefully this conversation will kind of, touch you guys that are listening after the fact. I know, Mike, you say you listen a lot of times after the fact, and
totally.
It's like you want to comment, get involved.
That's usually when I would pepper in most of my comments.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Part
2. What are your plans for this summer? Career, life, everything else. And this one, it's funny that Ray's on here talking about the UK doesn't get US feeds from where he's going to be at or something like that. I think he's joking because he has strong opinions about the US. But have we as a country/people learned anything or grown since last year and last summer? I think that's going to be the real one.
Man, where do you even start with that conversation? That's the question.
Where do you start? I've learned a lot this, since last summer. We've talked about it a little bit on the show. I mean, it's always ups and downs. My big thing is, I've kind of learned that I need to put more effort into being consistent, not only like personally with everything from getting enough sleep, watching my diet, watching, again, another year older, it's one of those things. I mean, we all talk about it. Things are different. You know what I mean? Yep. You need to, I get lax on it. I haven't taken the walks like I used to a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? It's been a little longer, I think, than a year, but I was doing that really. I'll get the Facebook memories from this show or from even like during, not necessarily lockdown, but it was really like right after that. I mean, like just didn't have as much gray in my beard. I seemed to be just a little bit because I was doing all the walks, burning a lot more calories. I could see just a little more glow in the face. You know what I mean? And so it's like something that you don't realize it until you kind of see where you were, where you might be going. And so it's something that with the house, it's been great. I've got some new furniture since last year, trying to like make it more homey. With the hopes, soon that, my girlfriend will move in, make it a little bit more of a home. Then it's been nice, and not necessarily something that I wanted to do. I did want to do it, but not the way, like I got to replace the roof here coming up. You know what I mean? Like it's those things that may seem trivial to a lot of people, but those are like real life experiences that, a lot of people look at it as negative. Luckily the insurance is covering most of the roof other than my deductible, but it's like, still money on my pocket, but like now I'm going to be really happy to see a brand new roof on my house that I own. You know what I mean? That's people like, I guess they overlook that. It's oh man, I got just another thing I got to do. And that's something that I've learned, is that I had that attitude on a lot of things where it's like, oh, it's just one more thing I got to do. And I think it's really easy. And I'm really trying to take a moment like this where we're looking at it and saying, have I learned anything from last year at this time? Yeah, I actually have. And I think a big part of it is I'm trying to appreciate a little bit more some of the things that I used to have the attitude of, I have to do this.
Yep.
Because it wasn't necessarily a year with a rut like I've had in the past. I mean, I had a lot of good things going on. My relationship with Kristen's going really well. The job's going well. We had a great 10 event, in March. It's trying not to get stagnant again, letting things like, oh, things went well. Oh, this year is going to be another good year. Sometimes a good year can even feel like it's kind of stagnant, I mean, not saying that I don't want to have another good year. Like I feel like I had mostly last year, because you can always get the rug pulled out from underneath you, like whether it be a health scare or a storm that takes your roof off. It's just how you kind of handle it, and
yeah,
I think it's more for me is what I've learned a lot more again is, and I've learned it before. I'll say that I've learned it before, but I've learned it more recently, is that I appreciate a lot of things that have happened this last year, and hopefully that'll continue to happen and grow and everything else.
Life is all about gratitude.
Life is a lot about gratitude.
It's a lot about gratitude. There's so many situations that all of us go through every single day that we do take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times in life nowadays, like so many people are focused on all the problems around them, and they forget how good we all really have it sometimes. And sometimes it takes a big reality check and slap in the face to make you really realize those things. And I've always been a big believer, like if you don't have gratitude in your life, life will slap you in the face until you're forced to feel like that. Otherwise, you'll just be miserable forever. You'll stay in those ruts.
Yeah.
You'll stay in those you'll create bad habits. You'll stay in those bad habits. And it's all about how you perceive your life around you.
Sometimes it takes, again, getting real low or like getting knocked down on your back. And then you realize that like you have to get back up or else you're going to stay knocked down.
And I think to even piggyback on that is when those things happen, those things shouldn't happen when it gets so bad that you're forced to change. I don't believe that that's how it should be. It should be, you should be focused. You should be grateful. And I think the more you are both of those things, the easier life becomes. And like I've been through multiple situations in my life where I've nagged, I've complained, I've, blamed others. I blamed my life circumstances for the ruts that I'm in. At the end of the day, the same result happens. If there's anything that's going to change, it's because I have to change something, not because the world has to, not because somebody else has to. It's because I have to change.
True.
And I think going to your point, like as we continue like the age, especially when it comes like your health too, like I'm somebody that, I've spent most of my life being a fitness fanatic for most of my life. Obviously, what I do for a living now is no longer in the health and fitness industry, but I spent most of my adulthood. I'm almost 36 now. I have spent most of my adulthood in that industry, and I've, there's been periods of time where I thought I was doing the right things, and before I know it, I look back, I'm like, man, how in the world did I get to where I'm at? And
in a bad way or
in a bad way. It's like sometimes you even think you're doing the right things, but the reality is it's very easy in today's society, the way the world works around us, to focus on all the bad. And I think some of us forget, like for some of us, do we have a roof over our head? Yes. Do we have a car we can drive? Yes. Do we have food on our table? Yes. Like these are things I think people just take for granted and just expect to just have. Yeah. And the reality is, like, the more grateful you are for everything you have around you, like it makes for a much better life. So when inconveniences happen and things like that, like you can look back and be like, you know what, at least I have a home over my, roof over my head. I have food on my table. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the people that appreciate, to the kind of the point you were making earlier, the people that appreciate the most are people that may have struggled either in the past to have some of those in the, we call it like first world problems, right? Some of that stuff in a country that we're fortunate enough to live in the U.S. And again, that doesn't mean everyone's living the same life, which that is part of it. But the people that have either struggled with those issues in the past, whether it be, a roof over their head, whether it be a car that runs, whether it be a family life, it's about, hopefully that you really appreciate when you can get those things, that you worked for it. On the contrary, which I think that what you're talking about, taking it for granted, is that you just figure that that's just the way it's always been, and you'll always have a roof over your head. You'll always have, a car that gets you from A to B, if not has bells and whistles.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have good health. You'll have all that stuff. That's what you take for granted until you don't have it.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to say it again?
Sure.
Or I mean, yeah. What do you think, Nate? I mean, it's
that's actually what I was going to say.
On the same page.
Tying off of what Mike said, like, yes, the things that you take for granted, you will take them for granted until you don't have them anymore. Because then you'll sit there and go, man, I really miss having this. I miss having this.
Sure.
But if you get back to the point where you do have those things again, now sometimes that second, and there are some people out there, it might take them a few rounds of going up and down on that.
Yeah.
But they'll finally hit a point where they're like, okay, I have this again. I'm not going to ruin this. I'm not going to screw this up. Like, whether it be an opportunity, a relationship, material possessions, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
you hope you stick to it, right?
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah. So I will comment there, Mike. I know what you're saying. One thing that I've took for granted and I don't have anymore is peripheral vision. I had a brain tumor 20 some years ago. It was on my pituitary gland and optic nerve. It was benign. But when they had to remove it, I lost my peripheral vision. And the one thing is I don't have it. I've been used to not having it for so long. I forget, like, if I were to have it, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do with it. But there's some things that you take for granted and you don't necessarily, you lose it and you can't get it back. You adjust and you are grateful for what you do have. I'm not completely blind. So I'm glad I still have my frontal vision, and I take that and make the best of what I can. But I used to play soccer my whole life, played college, played kind of sort of semi-pro, coached high school, coached club teams. But when I was 29 is when I had that, the tumor removed. And during that time and the few years before that, I was really in the competitive mode of playing. Like, really, when the MLS just came out, I was going to try out and see what I could do. Cause I was at a point where I was like kind of hitting my peak at it. But once I had that and I lost it, obviously there's an adjustment, but I can always look back and say, you know what, I can't play anymore, but I was able to coach now and give kids an opportunity to teach them what I've learned over the years. And then be grateful for what you do have. So yeah, I know what you're saying, but I feel you, so.
That's a really good answer. That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me bringing this up, there's a gentleman kind of going back to like the last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was one moment, I would say probably the biggest thing that I've learned is to not have expectations. What I mean by that is one of the things that I've really learned is, for example, I try my best to be nice, to be empathetic, to be compassionate, to be understanding, and things like that. I try to go out of my way as much as I can to do nice things for people.
Nice.
One of the things I've learned is I don't expect anything in return for those things, because the more you expect, the more you lead to disappointment. So I had this conversation the other day with, where I work out. There's a gentleman that was kind of talking about how he was texting some of his friends and stuff like that. He goes, "Hey, I love you, bro." So, by the way, kind of paint the picture so it makes sense. He's a very wealthy, successful guy. He became very wealthy. I think it was with cryptocurrency and stuff like that. This is you would never even know by meeting him. And I just started, starting up conversations at the gym from time to time in the locker room and stuff like that. And he started going into like the rabbit hole about how he, he's reaching out to some of his friends like, "Hey, I love you, bro. I miss you." He gets no response. But his answer was, "But you know what? But when they need money or something else like that, they're really quick." I'm like, he goes, "That really gets under my skin." I'm like, hold on a second. If you're taking the time to reach out to someone, tell me, "Love you, I miss you," are you doing it because you want something in return? Or are you doing it because it makes you feel good as an individual that's the kind of person you want to be? One of the things I've written, it's really.
What did he say?
So what I'm saying is, if I'm.
What did he say?
So he goes, "You know what? You're absolutely right." Because what I told him was, what I said to him was, anything that you do out of kindness, do it because it makes you feel good about yourself, not because you expect someone to. Even if you open a door for someone and they don't say thank you back, or whatever the case may be, don't expect it. If it makes you feel good, do it. And if it happens to come back at you, that's just a bonus. That way you're not dealing with the frustration like, "Oh, this person didn't do this back to me," or "I didn't get this," or "I didn't get that." It's just focus on who you want to be as an individual. And if you want to be a kind, empathetic person, great. But the truth is, if you don't want to be that kind of person, then don't. It's okay. You got to be okay with who you are as a person and stop worrying about what other people are going to think. If you're going to do something to get something in return, just stop it. Like, get real with yourself and who you are as an individual and who you believe you want to be. And that will eliminate almost every bit of disappointment, frustration. Because, I mean, obviously frustration, if I'm not mistaken, by definition is frustration is an expected outcome that's not happening, essentially. Does that make sense? So
no, it makes total sense. I think it's a good point, and I'm going to build off of that. I don't think, and I'm not trying to negate what you're saying. You can do all those things, but I tell you what, that is something that it's related, but it's unrelated, because I get what that person was saying. You know, I say this stuff and they don't respond back. I think you can do that stuff because it does, you mean it, open a door for someone, trying to be nice, all that stuff. People don't respond. It's not necessarily you do it because you're expecting a thank you. The fact you don't get a thank you is almost unrelated, because you're just like, fucking really? You know, it's like, I text you, hey man, I miss you, I hope all is well. You don't hear back from them. Hold the door for someone, you know what I mean? You, I don't know, just anything, any of those nice gestures, right? You do something nice, give them a gift. It's like, they don't even say thank you. It's not necessarily why you're doing it, for the reciprocation of even just the bare minimum of polite manners, but the fact that the polite manners are rarer and rarer, that's the unrelated issue, where I would say, like, dude, I completely understand. Don't stop doing it if it makes you feel good.
Exactly.
However, if they don't respond back, it bothers you. If that starts bothering you, fucking call them out on it.
Okay.
Do something about it. I'm not saying like berate some lady you hold a door open because she happens to be the 10th one. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, she's actually on her fucking AirPod. You know what I mean? And she's like,
sure,
middle of a conversation around a conference call, and you open a door. But I mean, yeah, no, you can call people out. I think a little bit within reason. I mean, you don't want to get a gun pulled on you because you yell at a random stranger. But I do think that there is a little bit of that. Again, talking about not just necessarily summer again. And I'll get to Ray's comment. He had a good one there about, and Nate, you're going back and forth with him. But it's like, have we as a country / people learned anything or grown since last year? Yeah. And I think in the last several years, there's been even more of a disconnect that we've gone through. And I have seen the politeness of people in general. From my viewpoint, it went up in a good way, and it simply just fell back down all over again. I mean, that goes
toilet paper.
Toilet paper. I mean, it's like, drivers are worse these days. I feel like no one fucking uses a turn signal. They're still back on their phones all the time. I use my horn more often than I'd like to, just because someone's sitting at a stop sign or stoplight ahead of me that hasn't moved. You know what I mean? Or they just jerk over because they happen to be, oh, wait, I need to turn to this parking lot here that I didn't know about, because you're kind of following directions on your, I mean, just those types of things, the inconsiderate actions of people, I think, are back in a strong force that maybe were again, I took for granted almost. Like, this is just how people are. They're fucking assholes, a lot of them, and then you go through all this stuff. That was like 2019. You go through all this stuff, and as we get back into it, since last summer, I feel like we're right back where we were. We're right back where we were in this country, especially now that you see, like, the presidential thing starting up again, right? So now we got to fucking deal with that for another year and a half. Like, I mean, we're right back where we were. I think we've learned some stuff. And I mean, but I think that's where I'm not trying to drive the conversation in that direction necessarily, but with that guy you're talking to, I think it is absolutely like, I think your point is absolutely valid.
I have a secondary point to that.
Go ahead.
So the biggest reason why I would kind of bring that up is, at the end of the day, it comes to another thing that I've learned is, how much of my headspace do I want to give to little nuances here and there?
Fair.
So to your example, the people at the traffic lights, the people, those inconsiderate things. I maybe it's just me, because of the life experience that I've been through. Like, I appreciate time more than the average person. And I've just learned to accept that. Like, some people call me absolutely insane for like not letting things get to me like most people do.
Okay.
And the only reason why that is I appreciate my headspace. And I've been through experiences to the point where tomorrow is never promised. And I think, again, go back to the gratitude is if today was like your last day, would you let that person who's at that light bother you? Yes or no? You probably wouldn't. Maybe not. And again, some people are just wired that way.
You ever seen the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas?
And I think that's just where like I
fucking loses it, and then finally that's everything that's been stewing.
Yeah, as you get older, you start to relate. You start to relate more and more to him.
And I do think there is a fine line between being naive and being kind.
Sure.
But at the same time, I focus more on who do I want to be for me, and I'm not going to let the actions of other people change who I am as a person. Now, going back to calling people out, if you feel that it's worth it to you, then by all means. But at the same time, too, I'm also a big believer on when it comes to friends, family, people in general, you don't necessarily want to, let's say cut ties with people per se, but you need to know where to place them.
Right.
So like if you are being kind and nice, you don't have to let other people's actions affect you in a negative way. You can just know moving forward how to handle and how much attention you're going to give to somebody or something. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
So where it saves you that pain and that frustration of like, I'm being nice, I'm being cordial, I'm trying to be like, do all these nice things, get nothing in return. But again, if you're doing it because it makes you feel good, then you're already winning. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I gave you I credit that side of it. I'm saying it's almost an unrelated side of the frustration of not getting the text back or not getting the common courtesy, as we used to call it, of just the response, the thank you, or the whatever it might be. I think that's, if you can segment that or compartmentalize that, I think that would be a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like I can actually rationalize that it's like, no, I still feel good that I was there for that person. The fact that they're not there for me when I need them fucking pisses me off.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I say this, and it's tougher for me to do, is that, I'm not going to be there to help you the next time you ask for it.
That's the point, exactly.
But I still struggle with it as a person, be like, but that person needs help. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm going to do it because that's what I want to do. Like, you really have to go extreme for me not to do it. You know what I mean? It's but I'm still frustrated over here. And, I think it gets to that point of, if you can manage it like you're talking about. Because I'm sure you still get frustrated. I'm sure you still deal with that. But you said in your headspace, you don't want it to overwhelm you. You don't want it to ruin a day. You don't necessarily think that, a person cutting you off is the end all be all. And you don't want to necessarily expend that kind of an energy towards that, because you realize that there's nothing that's going to good, that nothing good can come of something like that.
Yeah. So essentially, like, for example, when those types of situations happen with me, because I think we all do, as much as I have a positive mindset and focus on inner peace, those emotions do come up. But what I've taught myself is in those moments, maybe because I trained myself enough, when I'm in that moment, I'm feeling that sensation, I ask myself, can I control the situation? Yes or no? And if I can, I will do what I can about it. If I can't, then it's only my own fault that I'm allowing myself to be angry and frustrated about it.
Sure.
Just like when it comes to people who, let's just say, they stab you in the back, they mistreat you, stuff like that. Like, I'm a very big believer. Like heartbreak. What is it? Heartbreak, dishonesty. What's the other one? Deceitment, stuff like that. Yeah. Anger, pain, frustration are punishments that you give yourself for other people's actions. Correct. You didn't do anything, but you're allowing somebody else to make you feel that way. And that's where you have to value your own inner peace enough to let that go.
Absolutely.
Well, all right. So you said something earlier about, not caring, how other people necessarily think or reciprocate and stuff like that.
Sure.
Well, I think in our society, there's a lot of weight put on how others perceive us. There are a lot of people that, and maybe they care too much about what people think of them, but how do you not?
You just don't.
You just don't.
That's
I know it sounds crazy.
For the audience that may struggle with the you just don't, like, let's walk us through this.
So
the 5 steps of you just don't, or how many steps there are.
The more you care about other people's opinions, basically it says that you care more about other people's opinions than you do about yourself.
Got it.
The more you care about yourself, the more that you take care of yourself and you focus on your inner peace, what you'll start to learn is the more you let go of those things, when you focus on you and you focus on what makes you happy, what makes you feel fulfilled, you surround yourself with what you want to be and who you want to be. And I also have another rule, like when you get very clear in your life what you want, what you don't want, what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate.
Call those non-negotiables.
Those non-negotiables. If you can stay within those 4 walls, what will start to happen over time, people are going to leave your life. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's friends, maybe it's even family. You know, like those things are going to happen. What's going to start happening is the longer you stay consistent with that, and for some people, you may be alone for a little while, and that's okay. Yeah. But over time, the more you walk through life and you stay within those 4 walls, the right people, the right opportunities, the right things will start to fall into place. And most people are too afraid to take that step out because they feel like, oh, I can't turn my back on my friends. I can't turn my back on my family. It's just part of life. No, it's not. It's really not. It takes a lot of courage to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and understand that I am not happy. I am not okay with the way my life is. I'm not okay with some of the people that are in my life. And you have to have the courage within yourself to do what's best for you and not worry about everybody else. Because at the end of the day, this is your life. This isn't somebody else's life. This is yours. And you deserve, as a human being on this world, the life that you were given to live a happy and fulfilled life. And it's going to be different for everyone. Everyone has different life circumstances. Everyone has different situations, but you are in full control. 1, you're in full control of your emotions and how you choose to handle them. And number 2, you're in full control of your choices. You know, going back to the point where can you control it or can you not control it? If you can control it, you can change it. If you can't control it, you have to learn to accept what is and make the best of it.
Sure.
That's what's real. That's a really good
and everyone's path is different, right? I mean,
exactly.
All the way back to where and to what you were born to.
Exactly.
I remember I had I didn't like him at first, but then I had full 4 semesters with this professor. And I went to Miami University in Ohio. For those that know that, it's a very nice public school in Ohio, but it's a very higher end, I guess you could call it, or has that reputation. And sure enough, the sociology professor at one point, I forget what we were talking about, he's like, I just want to take a moment and just say, congratulations to all you guys for just making the smart move. The majority were born to middle to upper class parents that got you the opportunity to be here. And when you say it like that, I mean, that is a path that nowadays you're not supposed to, but a lot, depending on what you look and like you're supposed to, in a sense, feel guilty about that path. But that is a way of saying, and because he followed it up with, it's like, you guys could have picked parents to be born, in like a third world country that you guys didn't make it past 2. So I just want to congratulate you guys for making the right decision of where you were born and to what parents. And I think saying it like that, even at that age, I was probably 19 at the time, just hearing that, I mean, it stuck with me for a reason, that I know that life isn't fair. And I know that, I'm fortunate enough to have that. My life has not been all amazing. I've had losses, I've had, divorce, I've had all that stuff. And, but it's not necessarily like we were talking about a few weeks ago on the podcast when people started, we had a guest on and people listening. It was like, they just started kind of comparing who had the life worse. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, what the fuck are we arguing about here? Like, talk to me when you've had this happen. It's like, I'm talking to you now when I'm having this happen. Like, it's like, why the fuck are you saying that's not as bad as what I have? It's like there's nothing wrong with having that.
That's one of the situations where I remove myself from the conversation.
Sure. So Ray, you brought up the U.S. thing. I really want to bite at that. I may go back to that here. See how it goes. But here's one. And Mike, again, Ray comments, Mike is talking about himself and not society in general. Not everyone has control over their emotions. Many people are completely driven by what others think and are not following their own path.
Can I elaborate on that a little
I'll
bit?
let you. I have my own response, but absolutely, since he directed
mine,
at you.
So.
No, I mean, you can put it on. You can say it for the people that are listening, because not everyone listens, or looks at it. But yeah, Mike, go ahead. It's directed towards you.
Exactly.
So honestly, you know what? You are right to an extent, and I will say that. And this is a conversation I had just the other day. Is I used to be exactly what was just depicted in there, and I used to be. I would say probably between the ages of 18 to probably 26, 27 years old. Mm-hmm. I was someone that I constantly cared about what other people thought. I was constantly like judging everyone and everything around me. I was a very emotional, blaming the world, like the world did this to me and all that kind of stuff. And the reality is I got to a point where I was sick and tired of feeling the way that I feel. Like, and at the end of the day, especially now looking back, everything that I went through was due to the choices that I made. Everything was about the choices that I made. Every person who you are today, you are a mere reflection of the choices that you make in life, how you choose to handle things, how you choose to perceive the world around you. I mean, I was that person. For me specifically, I understand like it may seem like I'm driven, and there's ways in life that I am very driven. There's also certain elements that I'm not as driven that I'm also working on trying to be more driven with too. What I found is through that, like through all those experiences, I was a very emotional person. I did blame everybody else. I did blame everyone and everything for everything that went wrong in my life. And I basically came to the realization, the more I started taking accountability for myself in my own life is when I really realized that I'm in full control of how I handle things. I'm in full control of the choices that I make. No one's got a gun to my head making like the choices to be negative or to be emotional, stuff like that. You know, acting on emotion is one of the most toxic things that you could possibly do.
I'm listening to both sides of this here, you know, and so like with you saying that you're acting on emotion, I think you do, but it's in a different regard. I will point out also to Ray's comment about this, and I think this is a very common thing. Not saying that that's not a good point, Ray, you know, as far as conversation here, but Mike is talking about himself and not society in general. People tend to forget when they single out people telling their own viewpoint that they forget that they are also part of the same said society. And so that they have had to deal with the overall social media. It's not like, you know, he's watching on Facebook right now, the podcast at the table. He and I actually communicate through Instagram. You know, since you know,
yeah,
that's the way it's happened. So people always go with that, and it's like, oh yeah, he's talking about himself and the fact that he has control over his emotions and control over his choices. He is also bombarded with the social media that you mentioned. He's also part of, in your, especially Ray, the U.S. society and the culture. So you can't necessarily negate. That's happening way too often, that someone of a certain demographic, of a certain whatever orientation, whatever gender, whatever it is, you don't understand because you don't know what it's like living in this country as this person. You're absolutely right, but I know what it's like living in this society, in this culture as my life. And I don't expect you to understand that either. And I look at that happens way too often, that it's an easy cop out in a sense that it's like, no, Mike is giving his personal his personal life experience that is just as valid. And I think that people in different lifestyles, different life journeys can actually take a little bit from that, you know? All right. My quick answer is people like that, delete Facebook. That's my first level of advice. If you're that big on it, we're going to put you on a social media prison here. You cannot have that anymore for 60 days. See what life choices you make at that point.
That's a really good idea.
But people don't do that because it's easier to say, well, no, they don't understand because they have control over it. They're doing well. Well, you don't know, you know, Mike and his life story, and you don't know mine necessarily. You don't know Nate's. You don't know Ray's. You know, I know more about Ray than anyone else probably that watches this podcast because I've known him longer. You know what I mean? But I think it's a real easy way to, and it's happening way too much across the world right now, is that because you are a certain demographic or you have a certain mindset, whatever it might be, or you were born into a certain family, that you aren't talking about society. Bullshit. I'm talking about the same society you are, but just from a different viewpoint. Anyone else? Sean doesn't want to get in there.
I feel like Sean could have a really good answer to
He
this
does.
for some reason. I feel like he's contemplating it in his mind right now.
No, it makes me think of a post I saw recently that was satire, but it said new app developed to increase productivity. Just shut your phone off.
You know what? Like, can I give a great example of?
Real quick, sorry, keep that. Ray says just because you're doing well doesn't mean you're following your own path. You're absolutely right. Again, I think this is like you're not necessarily. I don't know if that was directed to what I just said. That's again, it's like jumping around. You know what I mean? Like I just tried to say that part of it, and then it's like, well, just because you're doing well, not following your own path. Yeah, you still are. Just because you're doing poorly, it's not that you're following your own path. You are. That is your path. That is the absolute not say definition, but that's the concept of following your own path.
It may not have been where you wanted that path
And your
to go, or where
choices-
you thought that path was going to go, but it's the path you're on.
And I will say that other people's influence on that path and what you allow to happen, and sometimes it is very direct. You get fired from a job and you don't know why.
Hey.
You get broken up with, you get divorced, you get diagnosed with fucking cancer or whatever. It's like, that's your path. You it's not as good as someone that didn't get diagnosed with a major disease. You're absolutely right. And I don't understand that because I haven't at this point. I say yet because that was just like when I used to ride a motorcycle and it's like, well, I haven't laid it down and gotten an accident yet. But it's like I had that, hopefully that mentality that something could happen. Sean wants to get in. Hold on to that thought.
No,
it's just
you okay? I'll be quick. And I've shared this before. It's about just the whole thing about worrying about what other people think about you and shit. Now. So 8 years ago, I lost about 45 pounds, dropped a shitload of weight, but I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And I did it because I wanted people to notice me for the weight loss. But I didn't do it. And I say the wrong reason because that's what I did it for. I wanted people to go, oh my God, you lost weight, blah, blah. That was the most shallow fucking thing I ever did. Yeah, I got to that goal. But when I hit that goal and people started noticing, it was the most unfulfilling feeling that I ever thought I'd get. It's like, well, they think I lost weight. All right. Well, that's over with. Now what? Like, it was so unfulfilling. So now
you're expected to keep that too.
Right.
Maintain that.
Yeah. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. And you're like, fuck, now I got to even work harder. But I've gained a lot of the weight back and I'm still struggling with my weight, but I'm also not I'm slowly kind of making some transitions, but it's all for the reasons for being healthier, feeling good about myself, giving myself more energy, and not about what other people are going to think about me. And I feel it's embarrassing for me to admit it, but I will, just because it's a good point to bring up. But I'm kind of an open book, Mike, as these guys can tell you. So I'm not afraid to say what I feel or how I feel about myself or whatever. And it's I don't know. You know, what's interesting too is my mother-in-law, she's been meditating like 5 minutes a day. She goes outside, puts her bare feet in the grass and just kind of gets connected to the earth and just has that. And it just kind of, and I actually been doing it recently, and it just kind of like reconnects you with about your day. You're just taking it one day at a time, staying more in the present and just being more focused on what you need to do. And all that other shit will fall in place, but it's not about that. It's just all about how you're living your life and how your journey is. And whether you lose weight or not, it's like, how do you feel about yourself?
Well, in doing what you did, if you did it for yourself, right? I think it's a similar action is that, because when I was taking the walks every day after I went through some difficult stuff, right? I did that. Now that things are, again, even better in my life, I haven't been doing that as much time, everything else. But like you just said, taking that time to do that, there is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from that and the biggest benefits of that is actually you feel a sense of accomplishment, as small as it is that you went out and did that. Your mother-in-law is doing that, is walking out. You said mother-in-law, right? Yeah. So walking out, standing there for 5 minutes, feet in the grass, that is, the action itself is big. Yeah. And then if you're actually capitalizing on that, you know, one of the things you talk about the social media stuff, and I did it for one major reason. When I was doing the walks, I was posting it just like I still do on my gym visits. I post it on social media, and I see Facebook memories from doing the focus check-ins at different gyms for the last 10 years or so. And at a time when I get the Facebook memories when I had good abs, I was, mid 30s, and I was, I'm not saying that I can't have them now, but it was like the things I was doing, like the way I ate, the way, I did my life, when I was doing the walks, it was different physically, but it was also, I was posting that stuff and I had a lot of positive feedback from that. At first it's that I've said it before, is that age old thing where at first people are going to ask you why you're doing what you're doing. Then they're going to ask you how you did it. And I think that can happen even with something like that meditation or taking that time every day. You'll have a new sense of people possibly, and I don't know if this has happened, but when people say, you seem happier, you seem more relaxed, you seem more calm about this. Has that happened He says yes. He's not on the mic right now, but no, it's fine. He says yes, but that's part of it. And you can use social media. Again, we're all living in the same fucking society. You can use that social media if you wanted to. And Sean, you could do that. And that's like, even if you did the 5-minute thing at your own house, and I'm not saying you have to, because I'm not saying social media is given such a bad name, and I understand why, but you could post that even on like something like the Bourbon and BS community page. You could post on your personal thing, Instagram stories, whatever. It's only up for 24 hours. But if you did that, and because I did it 2 reasons: hold myself accountable, right? When I was doing the walks, and I know I'm talking about glory days at this point because I'm not doing it anymore. But I mean, for you, it's like, if you did that, it'd be so cool to see how many people would start commenting and be like, hey, I'm doing the same thing. Or even if I'm not doing the same thing, I really enjoy seeing that when you're doing that, because it makes me want to do it.
Yeah.
And not saying they do it, but there is an influence there. That's a good influence. There is a impact on people that's something that, again, going with this, have we learned anything? And all, like, you can influence people. If you were to do that, I'm not saying like the guy that walked that you had, and we had that person, God, I forget his name, hiking for the homeless.
British guy,
Irish
guy. Fuck, I forget his name.
Hitchhiking for
homeless. But you do that stuff, you make it a social media thing. I mean, you could literally post it, and you have a small, say you have a couple hundred people following you. I don't know what you have, but like, friends on Facebook. I'm sure you have more than that, obviously. But it's like anything with that, you could impact them if you did it for a month straight.
Yeah.
Cup of coffee thing, or you're standing out there and you're like, hey, just, really appreciate this time. Heard the birds chirping, had a nice revelation. I'm really looking forward to the day.
Yeah.
At first, a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, this fucking guy, yeah, great. Like, he wants everyone to think that he's fucking Zen and all that stuff. You do it over time for yourself, and you're holding yourself accountable, doing this through social media, which is such an evil in this world. The people that may or may not comment, it's going to have an impact on people. And I think that compounds your inner circle, which also impacts you and encourages you to do it, as opposed to what you were saying that you did for like the weight loss and the fitness thing and all that stuff. It's like, well, that's great, they're doing that, but now they don't want to talk to me about anything else. And like, why am I doing it?
Yep. I will say, I wish I had social media back when I was going through my brain tumor, because there was 2 weeks from the time I was diagnosed to 2 weeks before I had the surgery. But during those 2 weeks, I put life in perspective pretty quickly, and not knowing whether it was going to be benign or cancerous or what the outcome was going to be, I was okay. I was at peace with what was going to happen, no matter what happens, whether I die or not. I had everything prepared, and that's something I wish I could share with people why I was going through it.
Yeah,
because you can, and like you said, the fact that if I can share something that may inspire someone else to do it, that's what it's all about. And I remember telling my dad that when I was going through the whole brain tumor thing, is like, if I can, affect or influence or put someone's life, or just one person's life into perspective, then that's all that matters. Because I'm walking proof that you can get through more things you realize you think you can, and you may not think it at the time, but when you're confronted with it and you're able to, come to terms with it during that time of unknown or unknowing, that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah.
And be able to share that with people, because down the road, they may come across something where they may have to put their life in perspective. And if I can put a little bug in there to say, hey, number one, you can get through this. And number two, I'm here for you if you need help.
Yeah. So, it's not necessarily your responsibility. I'm just saying you can spin it a different way and make something more of those experiences that you're trying to do for yourself in this day and age, where, Ray, not necessarily, like, it was not a bad comment. I think it was a great point. I think it's great that, when he says that about like what you were saying on your vantage point was this, and it's like, well, that's not the whole society. You're like, absolutely not. But you could easily post stuff about that, do what Sean's doing and post it. It takes effort, and it's not for everyone.
No,
there's a lot of people on social media that never comment. They just literally they look at it every day.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, but if you want to do something like that, you can learn from each other.
You can. You
got to put something else out there.
It's kind of like to that point you were kind of making about how you're trying to put things out there to inspire people. And there's some people that are out there that, like, it's all, you're just trying to get attention. You want more of this, more of that. I actually came across a situation last year. It was during the summertime. I remember I was sitting outside my back porch and get a message. So there's one guy that I know decently well from back home in Chicago. He's got a decent following and stuff like that. He's posting a lot of stuff for like men and stuff like that and all that kind of jazz. Another friend of mine messaged me. He goes, "Have you seen this guy's garbage? All this kind of stuff." I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I actually know. By the way, the guy's name was Joe. He goes, "I actually know Joe pretty decently well. Like I used to work out at the same gym as him. He spot me, no problem. He's always very nice and kind to me." And kind of going back to like the perspective, like life is going to be whatever you perceive it to be. So he chose the path of saying, "Oh, this guy just wants all the followers. He just wants attention." I'm like, you know what? What he's actually probably trying to do, at least I would choose to look at that, is maybe what he's presenting to the world could benefit somebody at some point, rather than sitting there and be like, "Oh, you just want the attention." I would rather look at it as, you know what? He's trying his best to share experiences for maybe that one person out of 100 that needs something like that to get their day going. Like that's a good, noble thing to do. You know, it's all about perspective. How you choose to view the world is what's going to dictate your behaviors and your choices. Kind of going back to the point, you're in full control of your emotions, your feelings, you're in full control of your decisions. It's based on what you perceive. Like any of you guys follow Tony Robbins at all?
I know of him.
Like the most simplistic exercise that I love, and it really clicked with me a long time ago, is imagine like, let's say nobody can see the garage. Like if you look behind me, right? It's like if someone was to sit there and be like, you know what, for the next 10 seconds, focus on every single thing that is black. Focus on black, right? And then they tell you to close your eyes completely. Goes, now tell me everything that you saw that was blue. Most people aren't going to be able, they're not going to know what to do. Why? Because you were only focused on the black. You weren't focused on the blue. And the whole purpose of that is like, if you focus on looking for the things that are wrong, looking for the things that are negative, looking for ways like, I bet you this person's only doing it because of this. Sure. That's because that's what you're choosing. You're not choosing to look at everything else around you. And I think that's where a lot of people miss out on opportunities, is because they're so focused on maybe
blinders on.
You basically have blinders on.
Yeah.
You know, like if you don't have an open mind to opportunities and different ways of thinking, you're going to be stuck in whatever mindset that you're in forever.
Yeah.
You're never going to get those opportunities. You're never going to see those things in a different light because you're choosing not to.
You're focused necessarily, like possibly on the wrong things, or you have a limited scope.
You know, kind of going back when one of the other things I learned too, when it comes to conflicts, right? You know, I never react with emotion. Anytime any sort of conflict that I'm ever in, I take a couple seconds or like a minute or whatever it may be, and I really assess the situation, whatever my instincts. And again, you have to if you're someone that's consistently been reactive, emotional, like you literally have to train your mind to start thinking a different way. You have to stop yourself and think, could this mean something else other than what I'm feeling? And I have this rule. Where I ask questions to validate if what I'm feeling is actually accurate. So if someone says something to you, right, and you take it the wrong way, I'm going to ask questions just to make sure before I say anything that I may regret, that may cause things to go worse. I'm asking questions so I can validate, okay, is this really what this means? Because more often than not, people take things the wrong way, and before you know it, it's turning like this humongous blowout because the room was misread. Does that make sense? And like,
absolutely it does.
And and I also have another theory too. Like if you have someone in your life, regardless if a stranger, a family member, friend, whatever it may be, if they're trying to say something to you or do something to you to get under your skin, and you automatically don't take it that way, if they actually want to, guess what they're going to do? They're going to find another way. And after the second attempt, you'll know that's what's happening versus automatically letting somebody get under your skin. Does that make sense?
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. Because if someone wants to do harm to you, they want to be passive aggressive with you, they want to give jabs at you, and it doesn't affect you. If they really want that and that's what they've meant by what they're trying to do, they're going to do it again. So rather than giving yourself,
or they might have had a bad day and then they don't do it, and then you realize that it wasn't as big of a deal as you thought.
Sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely. You know, comment out there. Of course, the mouse. Yeah, redo the mouse here. It's got a time limit here on the mouse. There we go. Good point here with what you're talking about, and what we've been talking about here is that I think what most people don't consider or are prepared for is, if you choose to share your life in social media, there will always be criticism. I would extend that to everyday personal life, let's add. Social media was supposed to be an extension of real life, right? That's kind of what we were doing here with this. That's the whole thing. So it happens in real life as well, how you have interactions with people. Sadly, there's a lot of people working from home still, a lot of people that don't do this. All they do is social media. They don't really have as many personal interactions. So it's taking place for actual normal, what used to be considered normal everyday life. But people criticize you no matter what. It's just the fact is now you can do it with a little less doing it in front of people's face, right? A lot of times it used to be they would just talk behind your back to people that were in the same circle.
That's the worst.
It's not good. It's not good.
I kind of have a little kind of peppered comment to respond to this one.
I just want to say to this before you do is that you're absolutely right. And if you're not prepared for criticism, you will be really quickly. If that is what's important, I will say that you're back kind of reset again, not learning from what we're talking about, or again, the whole, again, that's why I kept this vague, is the fact that it's like from last year to this year, if you're doing the same thing and all you're looking for is acceptance or approval, then you're doing it for the wrong reason again.
100%.
Like what Sean was saying with his, the when he was really trying to impress others by doing what he was doing, he benefited greatly from that. But as soon as there might be some criticism, if he started sharing that, or people say, oh, this guy lost all the way, he's just being cocky, showing off and all that stuff, and he stops what he's doing because of that, or he's offended, or he addresses that, now you're letting people take control of your life.
Yes.
So going back to the whole thing of you have control of your path, Sean does, you do, everyone does, Nate does. I mean, it's like we have that control, but if you put it on social media or you live your life that way, there are going to be people that criticize you. And there's so many different reasons. They may not like what you're doing. They may not agree with you. They may feel inadequate to you, or they're comparing themselves to you and they just react in a bitter way. It has to be for you or for people that you really value, whether it be family, whether it be your job, whether it be just, whatever it might be. What's important to you is why you should be doing it. And I think first and foremost, it should be you first. We've talked about that 100%. Is you start with you as your circle, and then you have your inner circle, and you have that social media. I mean, I have people on Instagram. I have people on Facebook that I've never met. I've never interacted with.
Yeah.
We both smoke cigars. We both do whatever, but we're on there. If they start criticizing a podcast feed, we've been doing this for over 5 years. If we took criticism from everyone that said, oh, we don't want to share, like you should try to share it to our Facebook group, and we reject it because you're just promoting yourself. It's like, well, somewhat, but the big thing is like I was looking through some Facebook memories, and we got shut down from a group a couple years ago because we were promoting the podcast on a Facebook page that was all about bourbon, and it was a interview with I think it was a master distiller, or an owner, and it was just like I finally responded. I was like, this is what's going on. We got rejected from this. I got removed from this Facebook group because they thought we were just promoting the show. And honestly, we were just trying to bring this information to people. We spend the time doing this. We do this every week. And you don't want us on there because we don't just talk about, hey, do you want to buy this bottle? Hey, do you want, look what I got at the store today.
Here's today's crotch shot.
Yeah. So
from today's allocated drop. So
you have to be, to Ray's point, you have to be prepared for that criticism. And most of the time it doesn't matter.
No.
Well, that's why I was going to you were talking about, do stuff for your approval, even a little bit more than that. Whose approval do you seek when you're doing something?
Okay.
Because if there are we all have certain people in our life that, if we do option A, we're going to make this group of people excited or happy for us, but we're going to make group B or this group of people over here, they're going to be disappointed in us. But if I do this option, those two groups are going to switch. So whose approval carries how much weight?
Right.
And, I remember years ago, I, sought out an opportunity to do something that I really wanted to do and I was passionate about. And I did not get the approval for that from my own father.
Right.
And that kind of hurt. And it's funny. I actually talked to my dad about that earlier this year when I made another career change.
Yeah.
And I actually called him out on it.
Deja vu.
Yeah. Because it was
how'd it go this time?
Better. Because I actually
what changed?
Well, I brought it up to him. I told him like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm leaving a corporate gig and I'm doing this instead. And he's like, really? You're gonna leave that? And I was like, you know what? Back in 2013, you said the same kind of shit to me when I was driving for an interview for that job.
Yeah.
And that hurt. And after a while, I didn't care, but it still stayed with me because you are my father. I want you to approve of the things I do because you're my dad. Like, you carry that much weight. And so,
to your point, though, you were looking in a sense for approval.
Well,
didn't have it. You still went through with it, though.
I still went through with it because what was the biggest priority? Me and Jess. Like, as long as Jess was on board with it, I didn't really care what anyone else thought. I only cared about what my dad thought, just for the sake, like, I would want my dad to be happy that I was doing something I wanted to do, especially if it was something that made me happy. As long as it wasn't self-destructive.
That's true.
No, and so Justin Turner out there says this, and this is a great point on this, is that, his biggest problem is filtering the criticism because sometimes that criticism is positive in what I need. You're absolutely right. Criticism is I get what you're saying, Justin, with that. Feedback is I think the biggest thing, right? So yeah, you can criticize it. I mean, if you take it, that's a tough one. I don't know exactly what you're talking about there, but I know that, doing a podcast or where we do whiskey and cigars and stuff like that, there was a time there. And I remember way back, and Nate, I know you weren't necessarily on the show initially, but I know you remember the story, but it's like, even, my own, going off of what you were saying with your dad, like my mom would say something. It's like, really, you're going to drink more and do this? And, and then she started listening to the podcast a little bit. And I remember there's a time when I first started, and, again, people didn't know I was doing a podcast and with Jake at the time. And she actually recommended it to her friend Elaine. And she's like, well, I mean, yeah, if you want to listen to it, it's kind of different, especially the second part. It's kind of enjoyable, but you got to watch the language if you're going to be offended by the language, because there's certain episodes that we just let them fly, you know what I mean? And so, but again, is a criticism, is a feedback, is that the same thing? I mean, there's a lot of aspects to this.
Yeah. If you don't mind, when it comes to criticism, I would say, kind of going back to Ray's point first, because I feel like I need to get this off my chest a little bit. If you're having people who are criticizing you, like if it were me in that scenario, right? If someone's criticizing me and I know in my heart my intentions are to do good and to be positive, and someone should criticize me, I've just found one person I don't want to focus my energy on. It's one less thing you got to worry about in life. Don't put your energy and focus toward. It's that simple.
So it kind of relates to what my wife actually texted me. Who do you give permission to hurt you?
That's perfect.
Like, I can say something to my wife. I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying, because my wife and I are married. Like, I can say something and it hurt her feelings. She's going to allow it to hurt her feelings because of the relationship we have. If some stranger on the street walking by says something, mean or derogatory towards her, she doesn't give a shit about that person. So she's not going to let it hurt her, because that person means absolutely nothing to her.
So, and that's to the point where it's like, you are in control of your feelings and your emotions. Doesn't mean you don't get them, but what you choose to do with them is what matters. But not to mention, I guess, call it a little bit different per se, but always remember, there's nothing worse for someone who's trying to criticize someone than not getting the response that they want. So not only by doing so, by focusing on you, not let it get to you, you give yourself inner peace. People are trying to be like that, feed off of that, and there's nothing worse to someone who's a narcissist, overly what
criticizal?
Yeah, is that a word?
Yeah, I don't know.
Criticizal per se.
That's not.
There's nothing.
That's not a word.
No,
we're gonna call it a word tonight. So there's nothing worse than starving them of the reaction they're looking for. And then on top of that too,
Starving.
One of the things that I've learned, I'm going to say I've learned this too. Truly happy and fulfilled people don't feel the need to criticize and judge and stuff. If you're a genuinely happy person within yourself, more often than not, criticism is usually reflected with some sort of insecurity or issue they have within themselves that they need to reflect on other people. If you are genuinely happy and fulfilled in your life, you're not going to want to criticize people for things.
It goes back to your example of if all you're looking for is black, that's all you're going to see.
Exactly.
So if everything that happens in your own life you see as a negative, you're going to look at the negative in everyone else's life.
Exactly. And kind of going back to the point you had up there
when
it comes to criticism, like I always try to encourage. People should stop criticizing people and they should start encouraging people. That's my belief, because if you're going to criticize someone, there's nothing good about tearing somebody down. Like, we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. We're all going to learn. We're all going to, I don't want to say self-destruct, but there's going to be patterns and behaviors that we don't want. There's going to be mistakes that are being made, things like that. It's always better to encourage, acknowledge whatever it is, and then encourage them to make a different decision. That way it's received in a way that feels like that individual is going to feel more respected, because they're going to feel like you actually care about them. If you're going to take the time to acknowledge whatever, instead of criticizing, acknowledge whatever that issue is, and then encourage them to do something different, rather than just being overly criticizable per se toward them. Instead of criticizing people, negative reinforcement, I've learned over time, just creates more toxic tendencies. Like, it's like a toxic positivity almost. Like, encouragement is what's really going to get absorbed more than criticism. Like, if you want someone to do something, or if you're looking for someone, if you're looking to help someone, stop criticizing them and encourage them. Acknowledge whatever they're struggling with, whatever the issue is, and just encourage them. That's all you got to do. It's a much healthier, more absorbent way to get someone to change. If there's something you don't want, that you don't like, you don't have to just bash them for it. Acknowledge the fact that this is what it is. Here's how it goes, and here's what I think you should do. But just there's I don't know, there's nothing good about criticism. Criticism does not make people feel good about themselves. When people don't feel good about themselves, it makes it harder to make a change.
I think to Justin's point, though, is I think the criticism, when he says it can be positive, I think this is something that, first and foremost, you won't get any criticism if you don't do anything. You don't put anything out there. Right. You won't get any praise either. You won't do anything, right? And Ray's trying, like he says, I love poking the bear. He says something about you listening to too much. You remind him too much of like Tony Robbins.
You read too much Tony Robbins. That's what he's saying. That's what he.
Yeah, he's playing. And then he said you followed up with "I love poking the bear." So
hey, that's totally fine. But the reality is, like, it's true though. It's really true.
So yeah, my point is that what I've learned and what I want to go forward with, like this summer and going forward, one of the things that I always bring up too is that once summer hits, and I've posted this before, it's a meme or whatever, is that. I'm not necessarily in what I want to be in my summer shape as far as like physically, that I go to the pool, take my shirt off, and I'm not as necessarily as proud as what I was, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. But it's like one of those things is that, people will look at you. What was it? Well, you've seen it before, Nate, where it's like the work you do in the winter or whatever for the next season, basically.
Yeah.
They're upset with you because like if you want to like have a good summer body, you got to start in the winter.
Yeah.
You got to start doing the work so you see the results. If you just want to, now it's summer again, you want to be that person that you want like everyone to like Sean, or like the stuff you put out, podcasts that we're doing, your social media, your everyday life. There's a lot of like background stuff there. Successful people. Ray is one of those that I know that he went through a lot of ups and downs in his life to be where he's at right now. And from where he's at right now, it's not necessarily reflective of, oh, that's the way he's always been. That's not the case at all. Everything that leads up to it to that point has made him the person he's been. And to Ray, I'll call you out, poking you as the bear, is you've had your ups and downs. Where you're at in this world geographically and also financially, also this, were based on a lot of your choices. And I will say that with what you're saying is that everyone will comment us doing the podcast, you posting stuff on social media, you saying certain things, you doing certain things, you're going to get feedback, whether it's criticism in a positive or negative way, to Justin's point, or you'll get some praise, or you'll get some, man, thanks. In a lot of the times, it's just like reviews on a fucking restaurant, is you won't hear the positives. You're going to hear the negatives.
Yeah.
So you have to have that. you focus on the negatives. It's like you don't appreciate the fact that you have a 4 point whatever out of 5. All you do is respond to the negatives, like the 1-star reviews. And that's what these are, 1-star reviews of your actions on either social media or your personal life. You guys are saying, do you let that occupy your mental space? Do you let that affect you? Like you were saying about you and Jess. It's like, yes, I will say this. Yes, to a point. All feedback should be accepted. It's just about what do you respond to?
That's a good point.
You can't. Thank you. I don't think you should just blow off all negative criticism. If you do that, I think you are also possibly setting shorter term goals for yourself, because you're on a path and you don't listen to possibly could be repeating negative review of what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you have to read those reviews. You have to listen to those comments, the criticism, so that you can actually put those up against the positive, put up against what you're trying to do with your choices in your life, so that you can realize you're like, that's a good point. That's not what I'm doing. I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Whether it be the emotional response, the knee jerk, you're
right.
upsetting someone, you're offending someone, you're making them feel less about themselves. That could be part of it. I'm still going to do what I do. But I also combine what you're saying there, Nate, not to be repetitive here, is that, what is it worth? An insult's only worth the person it's coming from, whether it be their actions and their lifestyle, or it's, do they fit into which circle of your life?
Yeah, I remember.
But you have to listen to it. Yeah, I think that is something as
well, because
being in business, being in like doing the social media thing, you want to hear those things. It's just, do you completely alter? Do you take it as like, you know what? That is something. It's small, but I could.
Like I can
shift
see,
it a
I
little.
I
could tweak it. I could tweak it.
Like sometimes someone may leave a bad review on something because maybe they were having a bad day already, and like that just it all led up to that experience. But and those are the ones that you're like, all right, like we didn't hear anything about it. The person never said anything to a manager about it. Like maybe this person was just having a rough day that day, and they were in a bad mood, and that's why they left this bad review. But if you start seeing the same type of review over and over, and they're specific about something, that's when you start to give that a little bit more weight, because then maybe there is an actual issue.
There's a pattern.
Yes. So like, if we took it back to cigars, if San Cristobal has, the Quintessence, and 1 out of 10,000 cigars cracks and, breaks apart like mine did, they're probably not going to worry too much about it. But if half of every single box that they put out is having that issue, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Now that's a repeated problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to address.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Jess and I had our wedding and reception, there was one family member of mine that complained about an aspect of the wedding reception. And I was like, okay, you're the only person out of 125 people that complained about that. But I had about 60 people compliment us for that same thing. So
did you tell that person that?
Yes, I did. And guess what? That person's no longer part of the family. So
if someone came to
because of that, watch what you say. No, in Nate's family, watch what you say.
If someone came to me with something like that, like I instinctually, my only response, like, what, I appreciate you for letting me know, and leave it at that, because I'm going to bet that person is probably looking for some sort of apology, some sort of reaction. Just, you don't have to be reactive to it. Just simply be like, what, I appreciate you letting me know that. Thank you. And just walk away.
I'll keep that in mind for my next once in a lifetime event, hopefully.
Yeah.
Or just be a complete ass and, obviously not try to offend your wife. Be like, what, I'll keep that in mind for my next wedding. Like, go fuck yourself. Are you really going to say that? Like,
I saw a video recently where a best man was giving his best man speech at a wedding. And he's like, yeah, Steve told me I'm just using your name as an example. Steve told me if I do a good job at this, he'll let me do it next time.
Yeah, right. Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Thankfully,
I did not
everyone
say
got
that.
a joke, but
did not say that.
But no, when you guys were talking about criticism, it reminded me of something that my stepdad used to say quite a bit. One of his, what he called quotable quotes. If you don't want to be criticized, don't know anything, don't say anything, don't do anything. Because if you do anything, say anything, or know anything, you are going to be criticized by someone.
Same
because
thing.
Someone's going to think
out there,
differently
right?
than you.
Yeah,
that's true. Very true. Very, very true.
So what's on tap for this summer, boys? Mike?
To be honest, if you want me to be very honest and transparent,
Yes.
not a whole lot. So I guess most of these people out there probably don't even know who I am. So
True.
The biggest thing for me is just making sure my newborn gets out of the NICU healthy. And kind of going back to, like, not to call Ray out again, but he goes, just because you're doing well, like, remember that comment from earlier?
Yeah.
It's who said I was doing well? Like, I mean, some of my backstory,
a little bit,
a little bit of my backstory. It's just everyone's got life circumstances. This is how we choose to handle them, how we choose to handle them. And like I have a son who was born on March 22nd. He's going to be in the NICU till probably September now.
Wow.
And he's been struggling, and he's been having some ups and downs. He's had a really good progression recently. Now there's a big risk at hand at the moment, and I'm out here and working. I still have to go to work. I still have to travel. I struggle sometimes going there, just seeing him in the state that he's in. It's hard for me to see him that way, and it really kind of tears me apart just thinking about it all the time, every single day. And I'm thankful that I have my fiance Marissa, who literally sleeps there every single night, basically gives her entire life as much as she can to be there for him. Like, I'm very grateful for that, and like that's a big weight on my shoulders.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, like, I have four kids, and my oldest lives back home in Chicago, who I get to see maybe once a month. That tears me apart. I don't get to have as much time. I am divorced. I know you mentioned divorce. Like, I am divorced. Which actually brought me to Indiana, so I could have a life with my two middle children, who are now 7 and 4. I basically packed up life. Me and Marissa packed up life so we can have a life with them rather than being a weekend dad. Like, I get them 1 week at a time. Like, be able to juggle all of this stuff and having to travel 5 different states to work every other week, trying to make everything work. Like, that's a lot. But at the same time, like, I know in my heart and my soul that, like, that is my life, and I can either sit back and complain and whine and bicker and blame, or I can just accept it for what it is and just do the best I can to make the best of it.
Keep moving
forward. Just because I have a positive attitude, just because I look at the life, that's because I have chosen to basically make the best of whatever situation comes at me. And I've been through a lot of other things. When my father passed away, I blame myself. Like, that's a whole nother story for a different time. I blame myself for about 7 years for his death. And then come to find out not till 7 or 8 years later that I couldn't have done anything. Basically, I made a wrong choice. But I thought I could have saved his life, but I didn't. I carried that for a very long time.
Yeah.
So through all my experiences has basically gotten me to the point where that's why I am today. I got sick and tired of blaming. I got sick and tired of feeling the way that I feel, because I only have one life. Tomorrow's not promised. And to where if today was my last day, I want to be able to look back on my life and go, did I make the best of it? Did I appreciate the life that I had? Did I do the things that I really wanted to do? Was I conducting myself as the person that I really want to be, not because of somebody else and things of that nature? So to kind of go back to the point, I'm not going to say I'm doing very well, because on multiple levels, a lot of people would say, wow, you're not doing very well. But I like to think that as much as I have my struggles, I focus on what I'm grateful for, what I can control, what I can't control, and I handle it accordingly. And that's the whole reason why I conduct myself and I look at the world the way that I do, because I'm either going to accept it for what it is, or life is going to be far worse than it already is. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
So like when it comes like the summer per se, like my focus is primarily to support my family, do everything I can to get us into a position for when he comes home, it's going to be better. We're hoping to move here in the next couple of months to a bigger place. We have a pretty good place now, but we need something bigger for more space. Helping Marissa get her own at-home daycare started, because she's worked for a lot of people that have taken advantage of her and things like that. And I know she's got a big heart, a big soul. She cares so much about people. And I see her sometimes get frustrated, with not getting the reciprocation back and things like that. And she goes far. She's got to be probably, out of everyone I've ever been with my entire life, she is the most empathetic, heart-filled individual I've ever been with my entire life. And it breaks my heart sometimes to walk in life knowing that so many people have taken advantage of her. So many people have walked all over her, taken advantage of her kindness to where like, I want to get into a position to where I can get us to the point where she can do whatever she wants to do with her life.
Yeah.
So like, that's where my focus is at. So, kind of going back to the point, like, I wish I could, get up, go on a vacation. I'll be honest, going back to gratitude, I am very, very grateful to have the type of job that I have now, because it gives me the flexibility to get to travel, get to experience things. And I'm fortunate enough to have a company that does highly encourage when the workday is over, go do whatever you want, go have fun, go meet people.
Do a podcast in a garage.
Do a podcast in a garage because they know that these are the things that are going to help you recharge so you can be focused for the next day and be on point rather than being micromanaged, being controlled to where you're just miserable, you get burnt out to where, this is kind of like my little mini vacation per se. At the same time too, I'm thinking about Rocco in the NICU. I'm thinking about, Marissa taking care of things at home and things like that, not seeing her at night, stuff like that, especially not seeing her at night for the last couple of months because we haven't even stayed together in the same household since he was basically born.
Wow.
That takes an impact over time. On top of
Strain
that,
on the relationship.
it's just there's a lot
Strain
of things that everyone in
Her.
life has life circumstances. You can either choose to dwell on them or make the best of them and try to do whatever you can do to move forward.
Or make a change if you need to,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
make a
there's
change.
that option there. Sometimes you do have to make a change. Sounds like you're pushing through at this point.
Right. And the hardest part is like we are not in control of what happens.
Sure.
That's got to be one of the hardest things. There's nothing we can do. It's just we basically have to sit back and kind of watch, and we can do the best we can. Like she does a fantastic job of like getting every micro detail of like every step by step what goes on with him and stuff like that. So we're educated. Like she's filling me in all the time, especially when I'm on the road and I can't be there. She's giving me every little detail to where it's like, I think I just lost my ADD kicked in. I lost my train of thought, but
No, you're good.
But yeah, so that's
you're pushing through it. You're
Exactly.
doing the best you can with what you have.
Yes.
But again, making choices, which, and Ray did say, he wasn't referring to you necessarily, Mike. It was kind of you speaking. He was speaking generally when he said, quote, "You're doing well." And I think once again, I go back to, I think I get Ray's point, but I also think that is the world that we're living in right now, is that you say you're doing well. Well, you have no empathy for anyone else.
Right.
Or sympathy either. You don't have you have no feelings. You're doing well. You don't care about anyone else.
Yeah. And just to kind of
that's not the case.
Kind of going to pepper back into like the criticism and people who do you wrong and stuff like that. And it's very, I know there's a lot of people that don't think like this, but when I see someone who like gives me an insult, like a direct insult or mistreats me, my instinctual reaction isn't to be like, oh, well, this mother F or whatever it may be. It's in my heart, like on a deeper level, I'm thinking to myself, whatever you went through in your life that's made you feel that you have to be that way toward people. Like, I really hope that something in your life changes to where you can be better for the world. That's really what I think. Because again, I was at one point that emotional, overly criticizal and stuff like that. Overly criticizing.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, that was the right way.
Sorry, I was trying to.
So I was at one point in my life that person. Like I realized I destroyed my life.
Yeah.
Like I was losing friends. I was not as close to the family. I mean, not that I have the greatest relationship with my family anyways, but I also live 4 hours away from anybody. Yeah. But I realized that like it's so mentally, emotionally draining to live like that. And I just hope that anyone that walks through life still hanging on to things, that still walks through life with that type of mentality, I hope that something happens to that individual that makes them shift and change, because I'm a very firm believer. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Everyone has the physical ability to make different choices and to make changes. It's just up to the individual if they have the courage to do it or not.
Yeah. And it's not always going to go well.
Right.
It's not going to go the way you want it to go. That's why it's not just like a one and done decision. Right. We put a lot of, I think, emphasis on every little decision you make. And I think going into the decisions, you should put a lot of effort into it, but you can't change necessarily if something went wrong, whether it was in your control or not. The best thing you can do is, if it was in your control, I think you can actually do it better. You can learn from it
yes.
and do it differently.
Yes.
If it's out of your control, then you have to adapt and do what you can so that hopefully you can respond accordingly.
Yep.
Sean, you want some closing remarks here?
Yes, sir. Just based on what we all discussed tonight, first time ever meeting you, Mike. I really love what you bring to the table, man, and just being able to share what you do. I'm so sorry to hear about your kiddo being in the NICU, man. I can't imagine, man. So
thanks, dude.
Yeah, cheers to Rocco.
Likewise to you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers to Rocco.
Yeah, absolutely.
I accidentally got some ash in my glass.
All right.
Yeah, put hair in chest. But and to kind of go back to what I said earlier, it's just about, you know, especially for a social media platform, I've definitely backed off of it because I've done things in the past, like you brought up the fact that like you'll say you do something to be encouraged or be excited about, and there'll be 100 comments, and there's that one person's going to be a dick, and you're like, and I've done that before, and it's like, and it's like that way anywhere, like even like on the news or whatever, they always bring up the worst part of things. There's so many good things out there, but and that drives home, and that's all we see. So it almost trying to like brainwash us into think like, well, let's pick this person apart when they like just subconsciously almost, you know. So I try to distance myself from that as much as I can, or just be light about it, not do anything intense lately. But you know, when I do say something that's like from the heart or something that I've accomplished, I do have a different mindset now, knowing that, you know, I'm probably gonna get some shit from people, but you know what? I need to focus on the people that are going to be encouraging and or maybe moved by it or encourage themselves. You know, and it's through trial and error, many years of me going through all this kind of shit. It really makes my life a lot easier when I don't focus on that shit. You know, it really helps to, and I've fought depression. These guys know I have some real mental health issues over the past few years. I'm actually doing much better now. Once the medications helped me a lot. So it definitely gives me a better outlook on life and allows me to stay in the present instead of trying to worry about things that happen or aren't going to happen. There's not much you can control except what's in front of you at that time. So that's all I got really. Just, you know, just stay focused, you know, straight the path and just keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm excited to hear more about you. I'm so glad I got to meet you tonight. And
likewise,
excited to hear more about you.
Thanks, Sean. Mike, you want some closing remarks?
This was fantastic. You know, I know I didn't get to chat a whole lot during the first part just because you guys are so much more educated than I am in this topic. I know I'm a big cigar guy and everything, but you guys' education level is far surpassed mine. So I'm glad we got to talk about this. This is good.
Sometimes people want to hear from the people who aren't experts.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that those people talk about all the time, they could be bullshitting. Hear from someone who's not one of the experts, someone who doesn't work in the industry.
Sure.
It's like, well, you know, it's the common man. Let's hear what they think.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Hopefully I've added some value to that.
Absolutely.
Like I say, you're just getting started. See this. I'm such a fast smoker too. I don't know if any of you out there are too as well, but I'm at my.
You're at towards the end of it.
This has been really good too.
Good cigar, right?
Yeah.
It's actually better than I thought it was going to be.
It's more up your alley. I know that.
Yeah, I tend to go for the heaviest of the heavy that you can buy. If you can find a heavy cigar, let me know and I will try it.
Love it.
I would say this would definitely be a staple of mine moving forward.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of in a way, it's not as peppery as a Murcielago, but the consistency and the flavor is very similar. And that's obviously my go-to number one of all.
Yep.
So I was actually really impressed. I mean, the draw was fantastic. The construction is fantastic. The flavor notes are really good. It's
rich.
It's a very rich and smooth cigar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say pretty decently strong too.
It is.
Yeah. Like I told you before the show, like that was my favorite new cigar last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nate, how about you for closing remarks here?
So it's funny, you know, earlier I was talking about my dad. You know, I didn't feel like he supported me. I forgot this is the second week that he's actually been watching.
Hey, Dad.
Oh, yeah. He just texted me.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
awesome. That's awesome.
See on Facebook or YouTube?
YouTube.
Nice. I saw some extra YouTube listeners on the screen up there.
Well, and so when he and I talked about that earlier this year, when I made another big career choice, that's when he actually told me. He goes, "Well, no, it wasn't, because of the job. It was the driving, 1,000 miles a week." But at the time, he never really made that clear. So that's why I was always under the perception that he never supported me in doing that, because he never said, "Oh, I think you're going to hate the driving." Like literally when I was driving up 65 towards Chicago, he called me. He's like, "Hey, what are you up to?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm driving up to Chicago for an interview." "Oh, is that the cigar gig?" "Yeah." "I hope it goes well, but not too well."
Because of driving?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. That's
you gotta communicate. You gotta communicate.
Yeah. But yeah, come to find out, that's what his biggest
that's
issue
interesting.
was. Yeah.
Maybe I mean, I could be wrong, but maybe part of him maybe saw some excitement in you and wanted you to not get your hopes up too much to where you can go.
When he actually saw me doing the job, so I was a cigar rep. So when when I would do events here in Columbus, like he would actually come out to those, and he would see how happy I was doing that. Even my wife was hesitant about me taking that position, and I didn't know it. But when I first started doing that, in her mind, she was going to give me 6 months, and then reevaluate where we were and where I was after that time period. But once she saw how happy I was and how much I enjoyed doing what I was doing, she was completely on board, which is always helpful when you have someone supportive in your household.
Sure.
Right. Absolutely.
And so like with the recent change, it was in the summertime last year when something happened at my old job where it kind of reinvigorated my job search. Like there was something that I had started to look for a job, and then things kind of cooled off. So I just kind of let it ride. And then something else happened, and it triggered me to start looking again. And so about this time, it took a fucking year before I finally found something. But it was one of those things where, at first, it was definitely a conversation to be had in the household, because it was going to be a lifestyle change. But very quickly, Jess saw how much happier I was when I came home.
Yeah.
Even though I was working from home every day for the past 3 years, and, working for AEP. And then I'd leave that to go work in a wine and liquor store at Carfagna's. So people are like, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" "I sell wine and liquor." "Really?" Like, "Yeah, I love it." Because I'm happy doing it. And there are certain aspects of my past that got my boss excited to bring me on board and create the position that I have, because there really wasn't anyone in our team that specifically does what I do. But he was excited and it was mainly because of work in retail, working at places like the Tinder Box, doing things like this podcast, talking to customers. That's why I was brought on. And, it's, even though, I have to go to work instead of working from home, when I come home, I'm happier. As a side effect, like I've lost 25, 30 pounds in the 4 months I've been doing it.
Stress, man.
Gotta get that cortisol under control, man.
But no, I mean, and, it's not like I've been trying to lose weight. It's just, things have happened. I've made changes, and that's a result. That's a side effect of some of those choices that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's one of those things where, like, if I actually had to poll all of my friends and family members before I took this job about, like, "Hey, what do you think about me taking this job?" If I had to go strictly off the poll responses, I probably wouldn't have taken the job. But guess what? The people that mattered, the opinions that mattered, made me want to go for it. So that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, who holds value?
Sure.
Whose approval do you seek? Who holds weight in that?
Yeah.
And, So it's first summer at the new gig, and things are going well, exceeding expectations, hopefully in all areas.
That's good.
Yeah. As far as summer plans, I have none because my first 6 months are kind of probationary, so I'm hourly, so I'm not taking any vacations during the
still
summer.
Have plans though for your days off or something like that.
Right.
Well, yeah, Wednesday.
There you go.
Yeah.
There
you go.
Hey, that's good though. Getting to be able to do this every week, that's got to be a lot of fun for the both of you two.
Typically is, yeah.
I've had a lot of fun doing this. I can only imagine how much fun you guys are having every Wednesday.
It is typically good. Part 2 is a lot of fun. Nate, did you have anything else?
Nope. Good.
So my closing remarks at summer again, based on the conversation tonight, it's good to hear. And I put up a comment. I think this is who you were talking about here.
Oh, there she is.
Marissa.
That is my Marissa.
Really enjoyed this episode. Glad there are people like you guys in this world. Great perspectives. And, when we were talking earlier, with what Sean was doing and what, I had done on my walking journeys and all that stuff, is that you have an opportunity to use the tools you have to really impact some people for a positive way. And, I think it's interesting, with Ray out there, even says he's poking the bear a little bit. I mean, I think he sometimes will come across as someone that obviously supports this. He's on the feed every week when he can be. Having those opinions and comments are really, they're impactful. They're cool to see, because if all you hear is an echo chamber of what you say or what you believe, you're not going to learn from it. And, we didn't really get to the last part of it, and that's fine. With the whole thing is, have we as a country / people learned anything or grown since last year? I think a big part of that is that it is the choices you make and who you surround yourself with, and combining a little bit of what Nate said, what Mike said, and what I've said tonight is that, it is summer again. When we were kids, summer was, at least here in the U.S., and depending on where you're at, where you grew up, summer was like what all you looked forward to. School was out. It's warm weather. You're going to the pool, hopefully, or you're just out playing with, kids in the neighborhood, whatever it might be. That was what we looked forward to. And there's a lot of times as adults, whether or not you have kids, it's still work time. It's just another day. And I think with your opinions and what you put out in the world, you'll get the criticism that people talked about. You'll get people that feel differently. Now you're bombarded with news from all over the world, from all different like small towns within the U.S., within the world. You hear about shit going on. You're bombarded with it. You don't watch the news. You can't get away from it if you're on social media or you have any alerts set up on your phone. I think what I've learned is, first of all, don't forget the things that you've gone through. Don't forget the things that other people have gone through as a whole, as a society, like we were talking about. Not everyone has your same. No one has your absolute individual perspective. That's something you cannot forget. And I think that is something that will be impactful on how you project yourself out into the world. Whether you do something like posting positive things, whether you do something like we do. We don't have millions of followers doing this podcast. We still do it. And, it's having Mike on for the first time. He's been listening for a while. Sean's in the garage and he listens every week. We have loyal listeners, loyal followers that can, they are part of the conversation. And I do get feedback from people, mostly positive. And I remember, especially in the beginning of doing something like this podcast, is that there were people, you should do it a different way. You should do this. You should talk about this. You should, don't do that, all that stuff. And when Jake and I were doing it, now Nate and I are doing it, it was one of those things that it's evolved to, we're going to do what we want to do. We're going to get out of this what we want to get out of this. And the biggest thing is I'd say, in a little bit of a contrast to the earliest part of this conversation, is that I do want people to get something from it. If no one gets anything from it anymore, Nate and I can sit around with friends, random people, or Mike's in town, come around. We don't have the camera set up. We're going to smoke cigars and we're going to talk about life like we normally do. But the fact that some people out there, even one person every week, gets something from it or is impacted by it, that's why we broadcast this out there. So again, being summer again, we're going to keep doing the podcast. We're going to keep, kind of living our lives and growing off of all that. And I'm very, very thankful that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I went through what I went through so that I can go through what I'm going through now. And I think that is something that I've learned from that. And I've learned from society as a whole that what I said earlier is that we've slipped back into a lot of our not so great practices. And I've tried to stick to the best practices. And I hope that more people do the same, because things like we're going through right now, we are bombarded with cancel culture. We're bombarded with, you shouldn't do certain things. You shouldn't have that opinion. You shouldn't vocalize this. You shouldn't smoke cigars. You shouldn't drink whiskey. You shouldn't do those things. And when it comes down to it, I'm thankful that we're able to do what we do on this show because we believe in it. Mike being on the first time, he's appreciated it. We've had people like Marissa watch it because you're on, and she makes that comment at the end. That's important to me, is that, yes, it's not an echo chamber. Not everyone that listens to the show or interacts with me, even on a personal basis, on a daily basis, has the same viewpoints as I do. I'm going to say things, they're going to say things that I don't necessarily agree with and they don't agree with. But if you can actually have conversations, you can communicate and build in everything these two guys on the show said tonight of how and what affects you. That's the biggest takeaway, I think, from this. So as you go through the summer, make the best of it. Make your choices. Try to enjoy the one life you have and really, really embrace the fact that you, as an individual, can put something out into the world that really impacts people, hopefully in the way that you want to. But the long-term thing is that you're honest. And so whether or not they agree with it, whether or not they necessarily think the same way you do it in a way that giving your opinion can be the same thing as holding that door open for someone. They may not say thank you. They may not say I agree with you or anything like that, but you do it because that's what you believe. And you hope that you're being true to yourself with all of this. So
well said.
Cheers, guys. I know you have an empty glass of ashes, but we won't be back. We won't be back next week, but in a couple weeks we'll be back. Not this next Wednesday, but the following. The community page is still going, so it's on Facebook, Bourbon and BS community page. And again, hopefully you guys share, like, and review this. And anytime you guys get something from it, think of someone you can send the podcast through through any of the avenues that you have, whether it be audio or video. So, guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.